Hello and welcome to part one of the GeekVerse Sidequest Game of the Year extravaganza, bonanza, whatever word you want to call it. I am the Adam Caster Dilemas, and for the third year in a row doing our Game of the Year lists, I have Dante, the Den Acolyte, with me. So good to have you back again. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing great. We're just talking about it. We played more games than I know of anybody else playing this year, so I think we've got a hell of a lot to talk about, and we're doing some categories today that I'm particularly excited about. So let's
Absolutely, yeah.
go.
So, I mean, with the existence of SideQuest on GeekVerse now, I'm always playing a lot of games, but the rest of the GeekVerse squad, they are also playing a lot more. But still, like you said, they cannot keep up with us. They're watching tons of movies, TV shows, they're covering that stuff, but we're the gaming experts here. So it's just me and you here. But intermittent through this Game of the Year discussions, you're going to hear from the other GeekVerse members and their top games of the year. So, for example, in this episode, Taylor, you'll hear his top 3 games of the year at some point. So that'll be fun. And then Travis and Kirkland as well in the later episodes. But yeah, as I said, this is part 1. So what does that mean exactly? This is a bit different than we were doing last year. Last year, we did 2 parts. We had part 1, which was all the best of categories. We had best music, visuals, levels, and characters. And that was one huge episode. And then we had the classic top 10 list, and then we made a collective top 10 list as well. So we're doing all of that again, but we're just changing up the format a bit here. So this part 1 is going to be just kind of the introductory ceremony, so to speak, talk about the games. That would just mention what games we did play. I have some other kind of icebreaker, so to speak, questions. And we're going to do best visuals and music today. Part 2 will be best, we're going to do levels. And then part 3 will be best characters. And then part 4 will be that game of the year, that top 10 list thing you'd normally expect. So if people want to just kind of opt in for certain conversations, other ones, hopefully it should be a little bit more digestible than last year, whereas here's 2 nearly 4-hour episodes. Good luck with that. And so I guess the release schedule for that is the plan is next week, which would be, I think the 13th and 15th are the days is when I'm planning to drop the characters and levels episodes. And then me and you, Dante, haven't discussed when we're actually recording that top 10 list yet. So that'll probably be the week after, but undetermined what day. If you want to go over to Patreon, you can get that stuff early. For example, levels and characters, we're recording that this weekend, so I'll put it up this weekend. So you can get stuff nice and early there. Join the Discord, all that good stuff. Thank you to Amanda who does the music. Normally I thank Taylor for doing the thumbnails. He did 1 million this year. Thank you, Taylor. But I did the Game of the Year one. So shouts to him. He'll come up later in the episode. And what else did I want to mention? I think that is pretty much it. And with that, I think we should get into it. So we did this last year. I think it's kind of a fun thing to do is to look back at our lists from the previous year and just see, does it hold up? Is there anything we would have changed? All that good stuff. So I'm going to bring it up here. These are our lists from last year. Dante, let's go through yours first. So quickly, just to rifle it off, you had number 10, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Number 9, Guilty Gear Strive, Metroid Dread, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Inscription, and then top 5, Monster Hunter Rise, Final Fantasy 14, Endwalker, Deathloop, Halo Infinite, and your game of the year was Returnal. I think I forgot that you picked Returnal as the number 1, but you definitely did. When you look at that list today, 1 year later, how does that feel accurate? Anything you change? Anything that feels weird? I remember we had Cyberpunk 2 years ago, and you're like, man, that should not have been as high as it was. So do you have any regrets with last year's list looking at it now?
I'm just like, man, whoever Dante was last year had incredible taste. This is chef's kiss right here. 10 out of 10 list, would not even move something down or up a number. Maybe Inscription. Right. Maybe Inscription over up, Monster Hunter Rise, but that's moving from 6 to 5. That's not really a massive adjustment, but honestly, I'm going to talk about Monster Hunter Rise a little bit more this year anyway.
Oh, that's exciting.
So that's maybe the only reason that I feel like Inscription should get more due because Monster Hunter's getting too much. But man, this looks good. I love it. Last year was great. I'm looking at our list of games comparatively, and wow, there were some heavy hitters last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like the general discourse that I've heard is this year and last year, people are saying oh, weak years. I'm like, you are so wrong. I understand from a certain extent, a lot of things got delayed, or maybe there isn't as many of those AAA, just mind-blowing games. A lot of them got delayed, but it's like, man, there's still so much good stuff at all time. Have you played any Halo Infinite recently? I'm curious because I have not done anything since whenever the last time we played, which was probably like almost a year ago at this point. I have not really jumped back in.
I feel like that game did not have legs the way I hoped it would for me.
Forge is out now, right? I do want to check that out. I just like, when am I going to do that? I don't know.
I didn't know Forge was out. To be honest.
I think it is. I could be wrong.
Or is it either co-op or Forge finally came out, and it was like they just like kept it to like 2-player co-op or something like that. No, didn't play much more Halo. Sadly, despite it being so high up there, I actually played more Returnal this year, though. Strangely enough.
Nice. Well, they had like the multiplayer update, right?
There was the tower. It was like it's like an endless kind of cool. Mode as well, which is pretty damn cool.
Nice.
But yeah, Halo, I don't know. I got like hundreds of hours in it, like in that year, and I kind of got my fill pretty quickly. Loved it though. Still love it.
Yeah, we were playing a lot in that first like month or two there.
Totally.
As for my list, I had Resident Evil Village, starting from the bottom. The Resident Evil Village, Metroid Dread Before Your Eyes, Wildermyth, Unpacking, Loop Hero, Hitman 3, Inscription, Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye. Number 1 was Deathloop. I love this list still. I don't think I'd make any changes either, and I can't recall if I played anything new that would crack into the top 10, like any other 2021 games that I missed at the time. I gotta ask you this though: have you ever gone back to play Outer Wilds? Did you ever do that?
Did I finish it? Did I finish that? No. Which is messed up actually, because like Outer Wilds, the original Outer Wilds is like, I still consider it to be like a top 10 video game of all time. And I think Echoes of the Eye, it came out at the same time as something else, and I was like struggling.
Late September, it's always in the fall.
It was just it was like that fall, just like bam, bam, bam. Here's a dozen games to deal with all at once. And I set it down, and I just didn't go back because I was scared to, and still am honestly, because I'm like, what the hell was I doing?
You'd have to start fresh at this point, I think.
Yeah. So it deserves that for me though. I'd say
it does.
I know. It was really, really engaging what I did play. I feel like I got pretty far in it too, which is a bummer.
Okay, moving on from that then. I just want to read off the games that we did play, just so people listening know what is eligible, essentially. So if something's not mentioned, it's either because we didn't play it, and if we did play it and it didn't show up, it's because we didn't like it that much, or not necessarily that, but it's just that there's maybe better things, or maybe it didn't quite hit that certain caliber for a category if we're doing it that way. So why don't we go with you first, Dante? Do you want to just rifle off? You can mention if you completed it or not, or you can just say the names of the games.
I'm just going to rattle them off. Some of them I did complete, some of them I didn't. So I will probably dig in deeper as we go into our independent lists, the ones that I finished, because I will have more to say about them.
Yeah.
So I have these in alphabetical order, so I'm gonna rattle them off. Callisto Protocol, Citizen Sleeper, Digimon Survive, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Grounded, Horizon Forbidden West, Hyper Demon, Metal Hellslinger, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak.
Or is that a different game? Isn't it Hellsinger?
Yeah, that's what I said, right?
Oh man, Slinger.
Hellslinger, right? Metal Hellsinger.
There you go.
Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, Marvel Midnight Suns,
Nice.
Multiverses, Neon White, Nobody Saves the World, Norco, Ollie World, Pentiment, Rogue Legacy 2, Roller Drome, Salt and Sacrifice, Scorn, Sifu, Signalis, Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins. Love a good just like multi.
What a title.
Multi-colon title. Stray, The Quarry, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Total War Warhammer 3, Triangle Strategy, Tunic, Vampire Survivors, Warhammer 40k, Dark Tide, Weird West, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Wow. That's pretty solid. I got to say, you played a lot more things than or like certain things that I didn't know you had played. So we're going to have a lot more, I guess, things in common in some ways, not necessarily in the top 10 of it, but that's exciting. Now, you mentioned you had a busy weekend when we were talking off air. How much you played Callisto Protocol and Midnight Sun so far? Did you get much time with those yet?
Let's talk about that, okay? So I bought Callisto Protocol, I played it for 2.5 hours, and then I did a Steam return on it.
Oh my god!
I
Wow.
rarely
That's a
do that.
shocker to me. Wow.
I was incredibly excited for that game. Dead Space 2 is near and dear to my heart, and boy, oh boy, that game was like in a 2-hour period, death by 1,000 cuts for sure. I was like, man,
Crazy.
I was being very forgiving. Like, it's crazy for something to be like, I can't do this anymore in a 2-hour period. And that one did it. That one sure did it. So I bet you a bunch of Midnight Suns though. That game's fun. I like that.
Okay, I'm glad you're liking that one. Okay, sorry, Callisto. I need to ask you about this because it probably won't. Sounds like it won't come up again. Is it the combat, the story? Is it like just the way you explore the world? Like I'm curious what it is.
There's quite a few things.
It's everything.
Like, yeah. So one, I think the combat is somebody used the words experimental at best. And I was like, that is fantastic. It just feels like they were like, hey, this is an idea, we really want to run with it. Similar to like maybe in Dead Space, the shooting limbs off. They needed like to do their specific thing, which was this dodge mechanic that just feels terrible. Like your enemies will walk up to you, they'll essentially stop right in front of you, and then they'll swing, and you have to dodge left or right. There is no quick turnaround, or at least that I could find. So when enemies walk up behind you, they just start hitting you, and you're like dodging the guy in front of you, and the guy behind you just beating on you. You constantly are walking up ladders or crawling through holes to a point that, like, you complain about this a little bit in God of War, stopping and starting. Oh my God, every 5 seconds.
Okay, that's good to know. Maybe it's not one for me then.
And then performance issues on PC were horrendous. It took me a good little while just to get the game running. And then from that point on, I was still like constantly messing with it just to hit like a locked 30, locked 40. Wow. It was reaching like upwards of 60 and then just dropping down to 20 frames per second out of nowhere.
Damn.
Yeah, it was, and then just at the end of the day, the dialogue was kind of whatever. I was hoping that it would grab me a little bit, but it like, man, it was
bad.
upsetting. It was upsetting.
Well, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad, like, because it came the same day as Midnight Suns. So I'm like, okay, I'm going that way. Who knows? Maybe I'll get Callisto. I probably would have got it digitally on Series X. So I'm glad. Like, I don't think you can do refunds like Steam has there. So I, probably would have been disappointed with my purchase there. So that's good to know. Okay, my list here, a little bit longer, but it's a bit of a mouthful. I've kind of separated this by where I'm at with it. So 4 games that I'm still currently playing, because it's December 7th right now. Our top 10 list isn't actually happening for a couple weeks here, so we have more time with these. Grounded is just, I've put like at least 40, 50 hours in that game, but I don't know if I'll ever be done. I truthfully never want to be done with it. And I know they just dropped a huge patch too, which, Dante, you mentioned one of your problems where you're dying at the bottom of the water and losing your backpack. They patched it, so now your backpack will go to the top of the lake.
Float to the top of the water.
Yeah. It'll, even if you're in a cave, like, it'll zip to the top. So that's one issue that it fixed that you particularly had.
I'm through that part, so.
Okay, well, who knows? Maybe you need to go back at some point. Neon White, thank you for recommending that one to me, Dante. I'm playing through that. I'm taking my time with it because I'm getting ace on every level. I'm getting the gift, and because it's got the Steam leaderboard thing. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so close to beating Dante's time. I want to go back.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and
you
make
have
sure
a few more goals, stretch goals, if you want to go back. You're doing a few. Signalis, I'm playing through. I actually wanted to ask you about this because the first time I played it for like a couple hours one night, and then I didn't play it for like 2 or 3 days, and I found when I came back to it, I was like, oh God, I have no idea what doors, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then I eventually figured it out again, and then I got to a point where, man, like just 2 or 3 puzzles in a row, I was like, I have no idea what to do. Looked up a walkthrough for it. I'm like, I don't think I would have figured that out. That is a very weird puzzle. And then last few days I've been going hard on Midnight Sun, so it's once again I think I'd be in that situation where I'd forget what I've done. Does it get significantly better or different in the second half, or do you think I would have a consistent experience? I'm questioning if I should spend those precious hours I have with games for this year. I don't know if Signalis is going to rise up for me, but if you think it is or it will, then I will definitely go back and finish it.
I think if you said you're about 3 hours in.
I want to say 3 hours. Yeah, it sounds pretty close. Which sounds like maybe halfway. So it sounds like
it's fairly short. It's anywhere between like 6 and 10 hours, depending on like how long some of the puzzles take you. I feel like at this point you probably know what you're getting out of it. I really love that game. Like, but I think it is doing something very specific. And if you aren't feeling that like retro Resident Evil thing.
Yeah. I mean, that retro, like that part of it, like I feel like I'm not really nostalgic for those games, like the Silent Hills and stuff. But and I am liking the game, to be clear. It's just I'm having some friction, right? So it's like I don't know. Should I keep going with it? I think I'll jump in there for at least one more session and see if the puzzles get better. Because if I'm just playing through a game and walk through in the whole thing, like that for me, Resident Evil, that's a good way that I like playing the game that way. But for the most part, I find that I don't have as engaging of an experience with it if I'm doing that.
Yeah, I'm that stuff is very nostalgic for me. Okay. So this game is like tugging on some heartstrings a little bit in a way that it may not for everybody, but it definitely does for me. I would suggest beating it just because I think it deserves the time. But that's coming from me.
I'll at least do another session and see how I feel at the end of that.
Word.
Okay, and then Midnight Suns as well. It just came out a few days ago. I've already played a ton of that, but I've heard it's very long, so who knows? Hopefully I can beat it by the end of by the time we do our list. But at the same time, there's so much like bonus kind of side stuff to do in that game, and I don't really want to rush it. So there you go. Those are my kind of in progress games. Games completed. So this is if it's a single player game, I rolled credits on it. There's things in here like Marvel Snap. Like you can't really beat Marvel Snap, but I've played so much of it that I feel like I have a complete understanding of it. So those games would be Dungeon Triangle Strategy, Horizon Forbidden West, Elden Ring, Tunic, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Weird West, Dwarf Romantic, Not Words, Nintendo Switch Sports, Rogue Legacy 2, Multiverses, Sniper Elite 5, Mario Strikers Battle League, TMNT Shredder's Revenge, Vampire Survivors. I don't know if I should say complete that one. That's probably inaccurate, so I'll scrub that one.
I was going to say, from what we talked about it, that game has a lot of content.
I've played like 10, 15 hours, so I've played a good amount. Live, Aperture Desk Job. I think you've probably played that too. I don't think that was on your list.
Also played that.
I also don't know if you mentioned Marvel Snap, which I know you've played, so I don't know. That might be missing on your list too. Just to put that in.
That is. Thank you for adding.
Stray, Cult of the Lamb, Curse to Golf, Rollerdrome, Kirby's Dream Buffet, Stacklands, Tinykin, Serial Cleaners, Mothman 1966, A Plague Tale Requiem, Marvel Snap, God of War Ragnarok, and Immortality. This next tier I'm calling games I dabbled in. This is like I played a demo or I downloaded on Game Pass and played it for probably around an hour or less than an hour. Paparazzi, one of the worst games I've ever played. Do not play that game. Some like dog photography game, but it is so janky and terrible. Rainbow Six Extraction, Infernax, Shredders, not Shredder's Revenge. It's a snowboarding game called Shredders. Dune Spice Wars, Citizen Sleeper, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, Grid Legends, Valkyrie Elysium, Gotham Knights, Somerville, and Dome Keeper. Did you check out Somerville at all? Because I feel like that's kind of the kind of game you probably would check out.
Yeah. I looked at it a bunch, and I was just like, it was in the middle of a bunch of games coming out, but that has that kind of like out of this world style thing, or like, is it supposed to be like Limbo-esque, which is
it's from the developers of it's not the same team, but it's like I think it's like an offshoot.
Executive producer of
something like that, yeah.
The Playdead games.
Yeah, so it has that vibe to it, but it is 3D, like you can go into the background and stuff. But there's a reason I only dabbled in it. I bounced off that game quick, unfortunately, even though I love Limbo.
I heard that a little bit, so that was kind of one of the reasons I was like, when I get a chance, I'll jump into it, especially because it's on Game Pass. I was like, okay, easy.
And then these last games are I've labeled them decided. These are games that I have not complete, but I've played like a good amount of them that I feel like I probably didn't finish it for a reason or whatever it is. I've just played. I feel like I can, in an educated way, talk about them. So those would be Sifu, Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, Far Changing Tides, Chinatown Detective Agency, Trek to Yomi, Loot River, Norco, Power Wash Simulator, As Dusk Falls, 2 Point Campus, Midnight Fight Express, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 / Warzone. I've played a bit of both of those if you consider them the different things. Pentiment, Nobody Saves the World, and Windjammers 2. On top of that, there's like some DLC that I checked out. I released a Game Jam game. You played that. So why isn't Spoon by Spoon on your list, Dante? I know you played that. You can add it. You can add it on your list.
I'm adding it right now. You can hear me clicking.
And then I played a handful of other like Steam Next Fest demos when that happened in October. A couple of those might be released now, but I don't think I need to include them on my list as I intentionally didn't try to play too much of them. Before we get into the category, one last thing is I just want to ask, is there anything that you didn't play that you really wanted to? I know there's always a million things that we could play. I feel pretty good, and mine quickly is pretty much just Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the one that I was so close to buying many times, but I didn't play the first two. Just heard the praise of it. Got that Game of the Year nomination at the Game Awards. So I think it sounds amazing. And even though I haven't played the first two, I think I would enjoy it. But I knew the time commitment on that was pretty high, and I decided to skip on it. And then I think last year would be just like High on Life is not out yet. It's coming out in a few days. I'm going to be checking that. It looks fun.
Right.
I have no idea how that would impact my list. I mean, I'll probably have played it before the list, so who knows? Maybe it makes an impact, but it'd have to be pretty strong. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I pretty much played everything I wanted to, and even things that I didn't want to, I checked out. And Game Pass is just a beautiful thing that allowed me to check out so many things. So
a gift.
How about for you? Anything that you didn't play enough of, or didn't have a chance to play?
Well, you added two to my list that I forgot about as well. So Power Wash Simulator and Windjammers 2. I definitely played both of those.
Nice.
Games, I actually made a little list.
Man, Windjammers is great. We should play Windjammers sometime.
Yeah,
so
that game is super fun. I love the original, so it was cool for that game to come out. Me and my buddy played a bunch of it when it first came out, but then we kind of put it back down, and I sort of forgot about it, crazy enough.
Mm-hmm.
But the games that I kind of wished I played or at least dabbled in, Plague Tale, honestly, both of those games, I've always kind of had a passing interest in them. So maybe one day we'll get through both of those. Two obviously came out this year. Pokemon, just heard it was incredibly.
Which one? Because you played Arceus, right?
Well, oh yeah. Oh, that's not on my list either.
Yeah, I was about to say. I don't think I remember you saying that one.
No, man, I definitely
do some better note keeping time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I definitely got a long list here already, and there's a couple that snuck through the cracks. So I almost forgot Pokemon came out this year, so early.
It was January. That was the first episode of Sidequest, I think, was talking about.
Yeah. I was on it too and everything. And I still somehow forgot that game existed. Pokemon Scarlet, Soul Hackers 2 is a game that I dabbled in, but felt like I needed to dig much further into. To really say that I played it, I gave it a good 30 minutes or something like that in the middle of a bunch of other games. And Immortality, another game we have spoken about maybe on the side a little bit. Definitely super interested in that. Half Mermaid, makers of Her Story, another incredible Sam Barlow game. So definitely want to check that out, but haven't had the time.
Sounds good. With that, how about we throw to our first break? When we get back from the break, you guys will hear from Taylor Field, who did his top 3 games of the year, and then me and Dante will get back into it, and we will start making these lists. Okay, we are back. Thank you, Taylor. His game of the year was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. What do you think about that?
I have heard very decent things about this past past Call of Duty. I don't know. I feel like this is a creepy story, but I walk my dog throughout my neighborhood, and every once in a while you'll see lots of movement on a TV, and it's crazy how many people in my neighborhood are clearly playing Call of Duty. I've
had that same experience. I mean, I'm always hoping I'll see someone playing Spelunky, which sounds kind of creepy. I'm creeping through their window, but it's always Call of Duty. It's like that's the only game I ever see, or maybe some game I wouldn't recognize or something. But I hear you there. I've seen that multiple times.
I could get back into some COD. I'm not adverse to it at all. And then I realized there was one game that I think that I would like to jump back into. And Kirby in the Forgotten Lands, is that what it's called? Yeah, I did not pick that up this year, and people seem to really, really love that game. So I got to do my due diligence. Seems like
it'll come up. We'll talk about it in the future. Let's get into our first. We're going to start with visuals, best visuals. So the way we do this, if you missed last year, me and Dante are just going to kind of alternate throwing out nominations. The list might get pretty chunky. We'll just keep throwing them out. We'll have a little conversation about them then. And then we're going to narrow it down to a top 5, the top 5 best looking games of the year. And then we'll do best music afterwards. So visuals, I mean, it could be art style. It could just be raw fidelity on certain things. A mixture of the both is likely what we're looking for here. But yeah, we're just gonna have fun with this. Last year, I have this real quick. Returnal, Guilty Gear Strive, Sable, Resident Evil Village, and Deathloop was our list, which all amazing looking games.
Very.
And because we're doing this music and visuals in the same episode, I have a lot on my list that are in both categories, which makes sense. If a game's going to go out of its way to have a cool art style and look very interesting, they're probably also going to want an interesting soundtrack to go with it. So if there's a game that would hit both categories, we'll shout it out kind of collectively now, and then we'll loop back to music afterwards. So Dante, why don't you kick it off? What is the first game you want to nominate in the best visuals category?
We've been talking about it a lot. I figure I can just get it out of the way. Why don't we just knock God of War out right off the bat? I feel like if you guys didn't know it, we did multiple recent God of War podcasts, and we did three God of War podcasts.
Yeah, we did retrospective of 2018, a review, and then a spoiler cast for Ragnarok. So go check that stuff out. Definitely
fun stuff. But yeah, God of War, especially if you have a PlayStation 5, Kratos is looking damn good these days, man.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking
even on
grizzled.
PS4. He's still looking amazing.
Well, there you go. He earned it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think there's just a ton of unique environments in this game, new realms, or even just different areas of realms we've seen before. This might show up in best levels, but Svartalheim in particular for me, really, really cool. The art style they did there, something that is so distinctly different, and also just the way it like kind of surprises you in that game after you've spent so much time in this kind of apocalyptic snow area, which also the snow looks great.
That snow physics. Best snow.
I also really enjoyed the soundtrack of God of War Ragnarok. It might not be the most original thing, but I think for what this epic Norse tale is, this conclusion for many characters and moments, I think it is. I mean, Bear McCreary is obviously a big name composer. It's got a nom at the Game Awards as well, but I want to throw that one on both best visuals and music here for sure.
Definitely good job of continuously setting the tone throughout, making sure that those big, huge, like epic moments are as epic as they should be. And then obviously if it's like a somber moment, it's nice and calm orchestral stuff going on. It's definitely a beautiful soundtrack on there as well.
Yep. I'll bring up these things on screen later when we're getting down to it. But in a similar vein, another big Sony first party, Horizon Forbidden West. Of course, both this game and its predecessor are some of the best looking games I've ever seen. Maybe the individually best looking game I have ever seen in terms of fidelity, but also the style, the cool environments. It's like the decoration of the different armor sets and the enemy types are just unlike things you've seen before. So just across the board, it is a beautiful looking game. Now, this is one thing when it comes to music. I mentioned this before we started recording here, that I find that music is one that's hard for, like, I do have recency bias when it comes to music, just because of the memory aspect of it. And so for a lot of these, I have gone back and listened to soundtracks in the last week, getting ready for this. Horizon is one that I put down at the time when I finished the game. I wrote it down for music. I listened to the soundtrack back maybe a month or two ago, and it didn't really do much for me. So I don't know if it was just the elevation of being in the game, the moments or something. So I wanted to quickly shout it out, but I don't know if I could put it on the list just because it's just not as familiar for me as it was when I initially played the game. But visually, my God, the game looks fantastic, even on my dusty old PS4 that's struggling and singing like a jet engine just to play the game.
Yeah, the style of Horizon is kind of one of those things that is sort of unbeatable right now. I feel like just visually, once again, like as you said, absolutely incredible. But that like kind of like future tribal aesthetic is so neat and still really, really works for Forbidden West. No matter how you feel about it, you cannot say that game doesn't look incredible. Just any snapshot of that game I'd be happy to have as like a wallpaper. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then once again, didn't make my music. So
what do you got next?
Let's talk about Cult of Lamb a little bit.
Okay.
I think that is one of those just incredibly cute, charming, like just really, really pretty games at the end of the day. Like it was really, really fun to just like build out your town and have all of these cute little animals running around. I thought the art style was really like, I don't know, it's just it really worked for the tone of the game while you're still having all of these like dark, hellish things happen around you. Yeah, just like not necessarily one of those games that's the fidelity is what you're coming there for, but I think that art style is gonna like stand the test of time as being one of these just like games you can go back to whenever, and it'll always look as charming as it always did. Yeah, I just really felt that game, like every time I booted it up, I was happy to be there. It was cute and pretty, which is something that is, I think, maybe not always stacked up against in some of these like bigger conversations.
I mean, I think kind of it's funny too, because that game is so dark, and so to have a very cute art style with like little, characters with big heads and cute little smiles and all that stuff is such a fun juxtaposition that I think really works for it. Since we're talking about it here, I had nominated. I do like the visuals of it. For me, it wasn't one of the best of the year, but I love the music in this game. It's like it somehow is like creepy, but yet melodic at the same time. Just like the theme that plays in your home base. I mean, maybe I'm thinking about sound effects too, when you got like all the the favor going in and like all that.
Yeah,
sound effects are very dopamine hitty, but I think the music too. I don't know, really kind of hip hop and like jazzy in certain ways too. Like I really loved the music of Cult.
The sounds of all of your followers, as well as they're like giving up their I forget the energy that they give you, but they're like, I don't know, it's this hum or this like
that's
I don't know.
So good.
It's so good. Yeah, I loved the style of that game. I thought it was incredibly charming and something I don't know, once again would love to have like some of that art as like a wallpaper. That's usually what you're going to get out of me. If I was like, man, I would love to take a snapshot of this and just put it on my screen for a week. It's in here. It's going to be on this list.
And for Cult of Lamb, I got to say, when I first saw trailers for it, I was like, the concept's interesting, but the visuals actually kind of turned me off. But when I was playing the game, I'm like, actually, I like what's going on. There's something about using like the kind of 2D images in like a 3D environment that I think is hard to get right. There's another game I'll shout out that does this as well, but it's one of those ones that when I actually had it in my hand and I was playing it, it worked a lot more for me in that way.
Nice.
My next nomination here, I'm going to throw out another indie game here called Trek to Yomi. I don't think you had this one on your list. Yeah, but this is a kind of Japanese samurai sort of setting here, intentionally black and white is what they're doing here. This is a game I did not really enjoy playing all that much. I played it for a few hours and ended up bouncing, but it is beautiful. It has that art style that it sticks to. The environments are so detailed. I also think it's really impressive how they made it so obvious where you have to go at every given time, even though it is black and white in the environments. Like on paper might be confusing, but just the way they funneled lighting, even though it has that limited color palette, like it's very impressive, I think, what they did with it. So and there's just like there's a lot to it. Like you really go on a journey in this game. It really is a trek. But even just going through the towns and stuff like that, there's so much detail. So I really, really love the visuals of this one.
Yeah, that was one that trailers were what kind of pulled me towards it, and then I think you told me, you're like, yeah, I'm kind of bouncing off of this game, and I was like, oh well, I'll maybe pop into it at some point. But visuals, like all the trailers of that game were what originally grabbed me in the first place. That game looks gorgeous.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So let's pop Stray into this list. Okay. I think the world of Stray is pretty damn cool. Just kind of this dilapidated world where it looks like humanity once lived in, and this cat is just rolling around, and then eventually you go farther down into this world and realize it's this like cyberpunk like robot, like just like Tokyo or New York or something like that. Tons of neon. Everything is just futuristic, but also not so like far future is like Horizon, where it's like probably what Horizon would look like if it didn't go back to being everything was destroyed, right? So like Stray has this like really almost like Blade Runner-esque environment that I like. I'm a big sci-fi fan in general, so that one really spoke to me. And then just you get your little robot that gets on your back. The cat itself is incredibly cute. Yeah, just a really, really pretty game. And the way that it kind of like moves you through the world is really smart by highlighting everything with neon.
TVs will turn on and just like point you in directions and stuff. It was really
cool. Exactly. Like it'll actually
which is creepy too, but it's like for the game experience, it's also very handy.
Yeah, so really original, I'd say, take on that. We talked about games being kind of limbo-esque, and this kind of has a little bit of that as well, but obviously in a 3D world. Excellent visual style in Stray. Definitely one of my favorite things to look at this year.
I'm going to sound like a broken record. This for me is a best music contender as well.
Likewise.
This is one that I listened back to in this past week, and I just kind of forgot how cool it is at certain times, because once again, it has that cyberpunk energy to it. But I also I think I mentioned this back in our review that we did in the summer, was that there's like a playfulness to it where I feel like they use like cat sounds at certain points. It's not like an overt meow, but there's that part of it to it. There's that part to it. I also think too, when I was listening back to it this week, one thing I don't know if I realized was just how often it will kind of drone on with almost just like the exact same bar, like over and over again, that is really effective at what the game is doing and kind of being a bit creepy and like this omniscient sort of overlook of it. Not to say that it's like lazy, because it's just the same thing over and over again, but it just does that enough to like set the scene and I don't know, make you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So this isn't one that's like easily listening that I put on to jam out to, because it is it kind of makes you feel unsettling in a way, but it perfectly matches the tone and mixed with that visuals. Like just if we're looking at best aesthetics of the year, Stray is also just easily top tier there.
The cat sounds is a great shout out, because whatever they were using to record those cats, it has to have been real, because all of my cats and my dog were entranced by this game. It was really hilarious. Anytime I was playing this game, my dog was like nose to my television. It was pretty wild.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they did something right there.
Good stuff. Let's keep going here. This is gonna be a bit of a 2-for-1 here. And actually both these are in both categories, but we'll go through them here. Which is the HD 2D engine, of course, looks great, introduced with Octopath Traveler. There's actually 3 2D HD games, because technically Octopath Traveler, that mobile game that they have for it, came out in like North America this year. It was technically Japan previously. I did not actually play that, but Triangle Strategy and Live both came out this year using that engine. I think they both have very distinct looks and styles, where Triangle Strategy is a very grounded experience. Live is different, because there's like the futuristic, there's the Weird West, there's like ancient times, there's all these crazy, massive, weird boss creatures. So when you compare them, it's tricky, and we might get down to that when we're actually narrowing this down to a top 5 list, because obviously this engine looks great, the lighting, the pixel art, it's a way to kind of make the old feel new. And I'm glad that both these games could come out and still feel pretty distinct, I gotta say, just because of their different settings, I guess, is a big part of it, but even down to just the individual style within that same engine. And both of them musically are fantastic. Maybe we'll talk about the music of them later on. I'll just put them on the list for now, and we can come back to them. But you had Triangle Strategy on your list. I don't think you checked out Live Alive, right?
No, but something I also really want to. That's 1,000% up my alley. It's one of those things where Live Alive is clearly a remaster of a very old game, and I was like, I have a period of time every year where I go into like old game, like I scrub through the backlog, and I think this will fit in there as something that's like new and old for me. Good
stuff. We can talk about those more specifically a bit later on, but why don't you take it away with the next one?
Yeah, so the next one I have another indie game. I definitely they were indies came out hard this year. Came in hard this year. Citizen Sleeper. Citizen Sleeper, I think, has one of this one's going to end up in graphics and music once again. Citizen Sleeper has one of the best atmospheres I think I've experienced as far as this kind of like sci-fi futuristic tone this year. There was this hand-drawn art style for all of the characters. You kind of it's point and click, so you're clicking through this junker ship, and the junker ship, while not like this incredibly beautiful thing, the character art, while you're talking to all the characters throughout, is some of my favorite I had seen of just like hand-drawn art this year. Really, really beautiful stuff. Every character has like tons of personality. There's pops of color on all of them, while everything still does still look a little grungy. You can definitely tell that this is where people are maybe struggling to get by a little bit. They're junkers, right? Like they're just kind of scrapping their way by. All of the artwork that they did alongside that is fantastic. And then on the music side, oh my God, that soundtrack is a 10 out of 10. Like one of my favorite soundtracks of the year, not to spoil anything, but definitely an incredible synthwave album, like or synthwave soundtrack. There's tons of more, like I was just talking about Stray, but a lot of games I think went for that synthwave sound this year. Stray did it. There's a few others that we'll probably talk about a little bit later, but I think this is maybe one of the most like, hey, I can put this on a playlist and just listen to this unrelated to the game itself. Big Blade Runner vibes, super atmospheric, really good, just like traditional synthwave without any too many like bells and whistles of like pianos or flutes or something like that. They really went for that like hard sci-fi sound and they nailed it. Loved Citizen Sleeper. Great story too. Like that, we can get into that game plenty. But just off of visuals alone, I think the artwork is gorgeous. And when we get into music a little bit further, I think that one's gonna be a bit of an argument.
It's sad that I bounced off that game like I did, because I think I only had one session with it and I did enjoy it, but yeah, there was something that didn't pull me back. And you and everyone else I've heard is just like, oh, this game's amazing, one of the best games,
really
maybe
cool.
The game of the year. So I don't know, maybe it's one I should have stuck with, but I wanted to call it what you said again, which is the character art was the thing that stood out to me so much about it visually. And I think for a game like that is so important, where you do not have voice acting, there is a lot of text. And so I think to make these characters feel real and come to life, I think that kind of thing is important, to have a very distinct style. And also, as you mentioned, just like, I feel like there's a lot of details on them that reflect where they are, and I guess just like the wealth, the lack of wealth that's going on with a lot of people here. So I think it's very important to have standout art and character designs in particular in a game like that. And it sounds like they lived up to it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Same way that like Disco Elysium a few years back was kind of in the same position. Very little voice acting when that game first came out in the original version, but like the characters were still very well interpreted because of the art style. You could really still get like an idea of their personality based off of just how incredible the art design was. And yeah, this is no slouch in that same. The fact that I'm having a conversation about any game being in the same category as Disco Elysium is crazy, because I think that game is amazing. So Citizen Sleeper is great.
Love to hear it. Next up for me is going to be, as I mentioned last year on our list, we had Sable. Another game came out this year that has a very, very similar art style to Sable, and that is Rollerdrome, which means you reviewed back in, I think August is when that one came out. I feel slightly weird about this one, because Sable, we talked about last year, both in the music and the visuals, like, wow, we love that game. Just aesthetically, it is unreal, unlike anything we've seen before. And also, I mean, the music was something different as well, because it had Japanese breakfast in there and all that. But Rollerdrome looks great. It has that same style. I think I really like the color palette of it. I think the fact that Sable came out previously to it just took the wind out of the sails a little bit, where it's like, oh, I've seen this before. So I guess it didn't have that surprise factor, but I mean, we talked so highly about Sable's visuals that it feels weird to not praise Rollerdrome in that same way. So it does look great, and that was a soundtrack I was listening to today again, and man, I forgot how like some of those themes are so good, especially you might be stuck in a level for a while just trying to beat it, and it's
Hmm.
like that. You don't have any allies in that game except the music. The music is on your side, trying to
There
pump
for
you up,
you.
trying to keep the energy high, trying to get you in there. So I'm gonna throw it in both categories. I'm glad that a lot of these games are music and visuals are stand out.
Yeah.
I think that makes for an interesting conversation. So definitely putting a roller drome in there.
A lot of the indie games went for like a hard aesthetic for sure, and to do that you kind of have to have both.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of one that did that in waves, let's talk Neon White.
Yes, Neon White.
Neon White looks so damn cool. I wouldn't always say it's like the most beautiful game you've ever played, because it is like in a lot of the levels pretty stark white with colors of
Sure.
contrasting pops of color, and then the character design is hand drawn as well, but it's like almost like a not Homestuck. There's another kind of like internet comic that I'm gonna totally blank on right now, but
It does feel like a manga at times, even
yeah,
the
yeah,
story
yeah.
elements of
It,
it.
it it has this this like internet comic visual style to it that I think works really well for what they're going for. But man, this game just like oozes cool to me. Like the just the way that you like zip around that world, it
Mm-hmm.
does feel like it just has this like amazing flow to it, and something about that style just like stuck with me consistently. Yeah, just something that like absolutely knew what they wanted to go for and just like went 100% with it. All of the characters have tons of personality with them as well. They all have like kind of different reactions and stuff like that they do in a very like uh kind of like still like comic book like
Yeah,
way,
I'd say.
or like dating sim sort of
Okay. Yeah.
kind of
Yep.
aesthetic, where they like look shocked or happy or sad, or depending on kind of the reactions you
Which is funny because they do that as like a cutout because they're always wearing masks, so you don't actually see their
yeah.
face. But then you'll see like their unmasked reaction to something, which
Yeah.
is quite a goofy thing to do. It's like, why are you even
um
hiding their faces if you're gonna show me that? But it's like that fits for what the game is in terms of the story setting and how goofy it is.
yeah, but and then like talking about music in that same vein, the music in this game is what kind of really connects the style of that game 100% for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's a game about like just zipping around and getting top times, and the music is so intense, and all the whole soundtrack is done by like a artist I absolutely love named Machine Girl. He is a like industrial dance music, kind of like
Interesting. Okay.
hardcore, not hardcore as in electronic hardcore that's like its own genre, but like this kind of heavy um IDM music, which is like he's got like screaming, and it's like just very high BPM, exciting, um weird music. It's
Yeah.
weird music in a way that but it's so fun, like very not quite metal, but like alternative. Like you definitely see, I don't know, you expect the people who are listening to this music to have like lots of piercings and tattoos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I fall in that
The
category for
energy
sure.
is very high.
Yeah.
To me too. There's certain sound effects that you can't really remove from the soundtrack themselves, that because they really like punctuate a level. This is gonna sound very nerdy of me, but like whenever I get an ace on a level, like I do like a little
That
drum,
shink.
like I do like a little air drum fill in line with like the beat of that, because it just
Mhm.
feels. I mean, one, you just were like doing this high adrenaline thing. You probably did do it multiple times. It feels really good. But then like the music is just like, fuck yeah, you did it. Nice job. Without saying that outright,
Yeah.
it is great. So I 100% agree with you on both these
And
categories
then
here
if
for Neon
we're
White.
just talking about audio as a whole, the voice acting is fantastic in that game.
I think it is
I know
pretty
we're
good. Yeah.
probably not going to have a category specifically for that, but
Well, I mean,
um,
characters. I think that voice acting
yeah,
is where you could talk about that in a big
there
way.
you go, there you go. But yeah, they got
Hmm.
Spike Siegel to narrate that game, so I'm pretty happy from
Who's
Cowboy
that?
Bebop.
Sorry, I don't know.
That's the main character from Cowboy Bebop.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's fun. Next up, I will throw out. This is always a thing. We had this a lot last year. I was like, Dylan's weird like pixel art corner. There's always a lot of cool looking pixel art games. I'll shout out a few, but I'll start with just this one, which is Mothman 1966. They call this a pixel pulp. It's like a very short game, like an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's a weird little cryptid adventure. If anyone looks this up, you'll be like, this is a very, very strange art style because it's very pixel arty. You can see like the detail of it is not high, but there's only 7 colors in this game. There's black, there's white, there's 2 shades of blue, and there's 2 shades of green, and then red is what they'll use when it's like an enemy is coming. Like they gotta watch out for the red. But I think that they were able to achieve a lot with that limited color palette, and it also adds to the creepiness to the game, and makes it feel like you're kind of uncovering this like urban legend or something because of the lack of detail. And it looks kind of weird and almost looks like something you'd find in like the last page of an old comic, or I don't know, something weird like that. So very, very much stood out to me. So shout outs to Mothman 1966.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Does not sound very colorblind friendly.
Yeah, I don't think it would be.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, man, I would struggle. Here's one that surprised me in its visual style. I was not expecting, when I was making this list, I was like, that's going to end up on here, I guess. And I truly didn't expect it to when I first started playing it. And I warmed up to this visual style so much throughout it. Pentiment.
Okay.
I love the way Pentiment looks. It is unlike any game I've ever played. I'd say the closest I can think of is maybe Wildermyth. But even that is very different. But it reminds me of like those old woodcut, kind of like German or European like woodcut panels. Very, very, it's all hand-drawn art once again. And then the script in that game, since this is all written as well, is different for every single character, which I think is this really, really cool attention to detail that they do. So your character is an artist. There is tons of beautiful art throughout that game. You look at the panels in the walls, and there's whole murals and motifs every single place you look. In some parts of the game, you're actually like building a mural, and depending on your choices, the murals change, and the artwork is stunning. Like pieces of art I would be like happy to have in my home. Absolutely beautiful artwork throughout this game. And then just the character designs, once again, this is another one where it's like these are handwritten. I mean, these are entirely non-voice acted games, so they really go out of their way to characterize every character and personalize them in a way that is impressive. This game grew on me like night after night. I played it every night for 30 to 45 minutes, and every single day I walked away from it, I loved it even more. Really, really gorgeous game that constantly is surprising you in its chops. I feel like when you at first glance, you're like, okay, this is kind of point and click adventure. The guy's like kind of walking at 5 frames per second. It's really like meant to be these still frame moments that are the beautiful parts, and not necessarily how it always looks in motion, which I think may be a little divisive for people on how it looks. But I feel like every single scene is an absolute work of art in this game. And then when you actually show you the physical works of art, you're like, oh my God, whoever drew these pieces is an absolute genius. And then just every single character having their own script is really, really cool.
That's a cool
like,
detail.
Different typeface, and they go
like
further.
One guy, like his text gets written upside down, and then it like flips it because he's just the kind of that it like perfectly encapsulates who he is as a character in this kind of unspoken way.
Yeah, really, really smart stuff with the way that they did the text in that game, to the point that I think it would have not been as effective if it was voice acted, strangely enough.
Yeah, I think that's fitting for what the game is.
Yeah. So Pentiment rocks. The music is, I wouldn't put it up against some of the best of the year.
Okay.
While it is still quite good, it's like old Germanic kind of, I don't know, flutes and whatever those. Like a bard, that bard instrument that
the lute.
A lute. There you go. Like flutes and lutes.
Flutes and lutes, baby. Let's keep it in the Obsidian realm of things and talk about Grounded here.
Yeah.
Because Grounded, for how few people worked on that game, it is insane how good it looks. Like, maybe the individual detail in the characters isn't as high as you'd expect it for something, but it's that world, it's the environment that looks great. I love that, I guess, theme, setting, whatever you want to call it, of being a little tiny character in a regular sized world. And I think there's never been a game. I don't know if I've ever played a first person game that's doing that, right? So that helps to make you put you in that fantasy where you can see that the blades of grass
The world
are,
feels huge around
yeah,
you.
10
Yeah.
times your height, and like getting up on a picnic table, that feels like a quest in and of itself, even though there's no quest marker, to do that. It's like, that is just such a monumental task. The game looks amazing. Particularly for me, it's when it's morning and the sun is rising in that one corner, and like it's shining through the maple tree and like just barely getting to you, and you can see the dewdrops kind of glistening. There are just certain moments in that game that look amazing. The enemy design, right? There's just different bugs, but once again, when have you
spiders
ever
are
seen?
terrifying.
Yeah.
How
When
do
have
they
you
make?
ever seen bugs? Like, we've seen giant spiders before. That's one thing, but just like to have a big ladybug or a stink bug, like, it's just very fun what they got to do there, and like the individual details that they've put in there. So I don't know. I'm just amazed at how good this game looks. And then you go to the different areas. The sandbox looks interesting. The pond and all this different stuff. So yeah, very, very beautiful looking game, especially impressive for, once again, the amount of people that worked on it.
Totally.
Also, I love the music in this game as well, so I'll shout that out here, which is that this game, for me, like, it is intentionally in a lot of ways a co-op game. You're supposed to play with up to 3 friends and go on this adventure together. I've played a little bit of co-op, but I've mostly played this game alone, and somehow I feel like the music works best that way, because it is a kind of lonely soundtrack in a way. There's something about it, and it's got to be the same composer that did specifically the Outer Worlds.
Oh yeah, I bet.
The Perils on Gorgon. That's like one song that I wish was on Spotify. It's not. If it was, it would probably be in my Wrapped every year, because there's something about that you just kind of zone out to and go in your own little world. And it's like a simple song, but it's so effective and so emotional. And that's the same thing for Grounded here. So I'm in love with this game. We're going to talk about it a lot more in the coming episodes, but man, this game looks and sounds fantastic.
It really does. It really does. I feel like you maybe got a better impression of music than I did, because I've played this game almost exclusively co-op. So I feel like
it only pops up every once in a while too. Like, often the game is just completely quiet, but then that theme will kind of chipper up for a little bit every few minutes, and then when you're in a battle, there's like battle themes and all that kind of stuff. But generally, it actually is almost intentionally like there is no music there, so you can just hang out with your friends. But yeah, that's an interesting perspective that maybe I had a different connection with it just because of the way I was playing it.
I will have to go in solo for a couple runs, because I know I've just been yelling all over that game. I've just been shouting. So,
where we're going next.
Let's go from something really beautiful to something super disgusting.
Okay.
Let's talk Scorn.
Yep.
Scorn is one of those. How can the most gross, disgusting game of the year also be one of the best looking? The visual design in that game is otherworldly. It is like, definitely they went for Geiger and they did the Geiger thing to a T. It is not to use some gross words, but even gets quite like phallic throughout.
Interesting.
There's all types of genitals in this game in a way that is absolutely disgusting and gross by the end of it. Yeah, it is really, really nasty to look at, and I think that is why it is so engaging. You kind of just want to see what the next absolutely gross thing you're going to have to stick your hand into is next. Tons of organ-like walls, and everything kind of looks alive, even though it's not. Some of it is. It is just, if you're a fan of Alien or anything else that's been like Geiger-esque over the years, Hellraiser, right? Like those kind of like really body horror driven films or art, it's going to be right up your alley. It is not the game I expected it to be, but that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it. It is just, every single thing that you do in that game is meant to gross you out, and they do an exceptional job of it because it's pretty nasty to look at throughout. I was fairly surprised at how effective it is in trying to make you squirm a little bit. Definitely one of the best art designs I think I've ever seen in a game.
Cool.
They
That's
absolutely nail what they're going for, but it's, I guess, definitely content warning front and center before you jump into that game. It is meant to be nasty.
Fair enough. This game also has some gross stuff in it, but not to the same level of scorn. The elephant in the room, Elden Ring. This is one of the best looking games ever, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, it evokes like that kind of open world Lord of the Rings experience that we've always wanted in a certain way, but there is just such a variety of locations that all of the distinct look. It almost feels like there are 100 different, like how Breath of the Wild has that moment where you walk out and see that horizon. I feel like Elden Ring has several of those, and just like in unexpected ways too, beyond like ways that they wouldn't even have scripted of, the player will walk out here and see this and it looks cool, because the game is just so good looking. I think beyond that too, it's for me the design of the enemies in particular. Of course, it's something from Software always, they have their classic gargoyles and wolves and stuff like that, but they also have their fair share of weirdo enemies that I think are very exciting, like the I don't know what the names, the ones that have like the coffin essentially, and they like grab you and like pull you into the coffin and roll around.
Yeah. I don't
just such a weird, creative design that was terrifying for me for many, many hours because they would always just one-shot me until I got comfortable with them. So yeah, Elden Ring looks fantastic. The music too, this is I think where I might be suffering a bit of not the recency bias, but the opposite effect, where it's just been so long since I've played that game that I can think about the subtle tones of Limgrave, and I like that. The theme, the like main screen music, I just, I listen to that so much that really
loud
stood out to me
when you first heard that game one.
And so I'm sure there's a bunch of other great music. Unless you're gonna fight for Elden Ring's music, I don't know if I have it in me just because I haven't played it recently, but visually, I mean, this is just one of the best looking games of the year from both style and fidelity point of view.
Absolutely. I think Miyazaki is up there with like Guillermo del Toro. Is one of the best like monster designers in the biz. Obviously different bizes, but well,
I don't know. He was in Death Stranding. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, every boss in that game has just one of the coolest designs I've ever seen in a video game.
Yeah.
Like every single one is cool in its own right too. Yeah, like I we talked about Elden Ring so much. I will literally sit here and take up another 2 hours talking about Elden Ring.
Let's not do that then. Elden Ring has got its flowers.
Yeah. But I do think that its music is pretty fantastic. I don't think it was gonna stack up in my top 5 as far as music goes. So
I'll put it there for now. We can come back.
I won't battle over it, but really incredible orchestral music throughout. Lots of really huge epic moments during some of those boss fights. I think FromSoft has always had exceptional music throughout. So definitely think it's worth shouting out.
Cool. What do you got next?
I want to shout out Hyperdemon. Hyperdemon.
Yeah, you mentioned this in your list. I'm like, I do not know what Hyperdemon is.
Hyperdemon is super cool. So Hyperdemon is the sequel to Devil Daggers, which is a game that came out in like 2017. Plays like Quake, but you were in an arena and you were just trying to survive as long as possible. And there's these really gross, weird spider monsters and centipedes, and but they're this not in the way that you would see these things in Grounded. They're much more the Geiger-esque version of these once again. So very grotesque looking versions of these. And then they have the thing that Hyperdemon takes from Devil Daggers and improves upon. Devil Daggers had this almost like PS1 FPS visual style that was really cool, but Hyper Demon goes for much more of a modern stylized approach, and all of the like hands, and the hand is like kind of your main weapon, so it's kind of like if you're playing Quake, obviously, like you just see the front of your hand moving around and like shoots out these bullets, but it has this like crystallized effect that has this this prism, this like light prism thing that happens, and so do all of the enemies. And every single time that you shoot or you do attacks, there's this like wave pattern that that obfuscates everything around what you were hitting, and it turns into this like crazy light show like throughout the entire thing. You end up doing the runs last like 20-30 seconds, and then you're back into it again. You just do it over and over and over and over again, and it is just one of the coolest things to look at ever. It feels like looking through a messed up kaleidoscope or something like that. It is really wild to look at. If you haven't, like, obviously you haven't seen this game, I would just look at a trailer for it. It is absolutely sick looking. It is a weird game that is impossible to explain, but it is stunning in its movement, and like it moves so fast, and it's a weird game to explain the way that it looks, because there's no art style like this that's ever existed as far as I know.
I love their Steam description, which is Hyper Demon is an FPS like no other. Pretty generic, but then a pearl of lightning, a dream for the future, a drop of poison, a swan song. Like, it's what's so kind of pretentious in a way, but
the visuals, the closest thing I can think of is Thumper.
I don't know that one either.
Oh man, Thumper was a game made by some like X Harmonix devs that is
I know Thumper.
Fun. Super fun. Closest I can think of. Same kind of like trippy like kaleidoscope like visuals as well. Hyper Demon looks incredible. The sound design's really cool, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily like jumping out from a music perspective, but the sound design in that game is phenomenal. You need to know when things are like behind you and around you at a moment's notice, and every single enemy has its own sounds and its own like clicking and weird like bug-like sounds that you know if they're getting close to you, and like the skulls that are flying around like have this really gravelly deep laugh as they get closer and closer. It's cool. It's definitely intense. It's a very intense game.
Next up, I'm going to throw out a weird one, which is Immortality. So this does not have an art style in a traditional way that we think about video games, because if anyone doesn't know, this is essentially they filmed 3 movies, and then there's 3 movies in this game plus like behind the scenes stuff. But so it's just 3 live action films.
FMV.
Yeah, and so I guess the reason I'm shouting it out here is one of the very impressive things that they've done here is that there's, as I mentioned, 3 movies that are all in different decades, and it looks and feels like they were filmed in those decades, and you truly are going back through them, whether it's just the quality of the cameras for the older movies. And then, just like the art style of each one is quite distinct as well. So I do feel weird about this one. There's no like, I'm sure there's special effects somewhere, but it is pretty grounded stories that you're seeing. But I think it's just very impressive what they were able to do with, the fact that this is one game that were all filmed at the same time, but they really made them feel different. Even like there's a couple TV interviews that you can watch as well, and even those look like when you'd see a clip on YouTube of interview with some actor back in the 60s. Like it looks and feels exactly like that. So very impressive stuff from Immortality. I don't know if I'll be fighting for it for top 5, but it was absolutely worth a shout out. But where are we going next, Dante?
I want to talk about Sifu a little bit. I think Sifu looks really, really cool throughout that entire game. It is definitely focused on this kind of somewhat cell shaded. It's pretty cell shaded, but not cell shaded in the way that like, not these heavy dark lines like in like a Borderlands or something like that. Sure. They're definitely like crisp light shading. Really good, just like kind of like, I was not to say Pixar, but just like cartoon animation.
Yeah, definitely cartoon.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's seen like the Dragon Prince or like Avatar or something like that, maybe.
Not like
oh, you know
low
what?
poly, but like lowish poly too.
Maybe even the League of Legends show. I'm blanking on the
Arcane.
name of it. Arcane.
Yeah, that's
Kind of
actually
that
that's
kind
a
of
good
like
comparison. I like that.
Arcane art style. I think is just like really, really great looking. But the thing that I really want to shout out is just some of those level designs are so cool. Like specifically the art museum and the final boss in the art museum when you're fighting the artist. At first you're fighting in the snow and it's really beautiful as you're like moving throughout. Really, that game has like a really slick, fluid movement style. And when you're moving through the snow, it's like pathing your feet through the snow. And then the second phase of that fight, you actually go into like one of her paintings and you're in this like oil landscape and it is just
cool.
insane looking. It does such a great job of like putting you in these really cool stages, and then during the boss fights like switching the visual style in the middle of the boss fights to let you know like, hey, I'm in the second phase. There's big things at stake here. And almost every single boss fight has kind of a second phase where they shift the art style a little bit and make it
cool.
yeah, kind of just change
the first
up
one
the
you
vibe
go into like
a little bit.
Little bamboo forest for a little bit.
Right, exactly. The fighter fight when you're in the club, like the club starts off as just like this like bumping club, and then as you go through it, it starts to light on fire, and then the final boss fight, you're in this like flaming dojo. Just really cool settings in that game throughout. Definitely something we're going to talk about in best level.
Cool.
So, but I think that game has such a impressive art style, and one of those that you can just tell that they put a lot of time and energy just to making sure that atmosphere is exactly what they were going for, and they nailed it.
I had this one written down for best music, and I actually went back and listened to the soundtrack today. And while it's good, I don't know if I have anything in me to fight for it. So is it popping up there for you or
did the same thing? Okay. Did the same thing. I was like, oh yeah, I remember liking the music, especially like you do the club so many times. You're like, oh yeah, there's like that great club music.
I'm wondering if there's like a particular level or moment that like really stuck out to me, but without the context of playing it again, I was like, oh okay, this is effective but not revolutionary, I guess. And maybe it was just like I wrote it down at the start of the year, and since then I've played 60 games, and it's like there's way more soundtracks that have stood out to me than
absolutely
that one, so,
that's kind of where I fell as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
let's see. I will next shout out another pixel art game here, TMNT Shredder's Revenge. This is going to be both music and visuals. This is some of the individual best pixel art I have ever seen. It is so good. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like the detail. I think for me, it's the colors that they use and particularly pop out. I am not a TMNT guy. I do not care at all about that property, but I love the look of this game, and that music is fantastic. It really, I guess, harkens back to that era that it's kind of pulling from in a fun way, but it's just very upbeat and fun. And like the different levels, like you'll just have a more chill, laid back street level, and the music is like matches that. But then you'll go to outer space or something, and then there's some crazy, just bombastic, really over the top, just slapping you kind of thing. So yeah, I just love the aesthetics of this game. This one's it's not cracking my top 10. I did really enjoy it more than I've ever enjoyed any other game in that genre. I do not like that genre, but I love this game though. I played it start through finish, and cool enemy design as well. Throw that in there. So yeah, really enjoyed the aesthetics of this one.
I'll have to get into that one. That was one that I definitely missed, and I like the old side-scrolling TMNT game, so I don't know why I skipped over that one.
Yeah, check it out. It's fun co-op too. You can play six people online. It's pretty fun.
Word. Next up, man, I got a lot of like real dark games on my list. I'm realizing. It's definitely I like horror. I'm a horror fan for sure.
That's good.
I want to talk about Signalis.
Let's do it.
I think Signalis is becoming one of the bigger surprises of the year for me. Definitely scratched an itch that Callisto Protocol wasn't able to. In my like need for
Maybe
a
it's
good
because you
horror
played
game.
Signalis first, and you're like, this
Yeah,
wins. Like,
yeah,
see you
maybe
later,
that's
Callisto.
it. Signalis has such a cool art style. So it is kind of like a PS1
Yeah, definitely.
era or Dreamcast era, kind of top down or isometric horror game, in the vein of the original Resident Evil and in the vein of Silent Hill. But there is this pixel art like layer on top of it that I think is really what kind of makes this so effective. Your character designs all have this. I'm going to pull up a visual of it so I can just like gush about it properly without making
It
stuff
does
up
look
on my
amazing.
own.
I think there's also a mix too of like typically the camera is pulled out and you're getting that kind of top down view, but then you will have first person elements too where you can walk around, and it's pretty impressive. That was very impressive for me that it looked great in that zoomed in format, because I thought it was like, okay, you're pretty zoomed out. There's probably not a huge level of detail, and it's not that there is, but like it looks very interesting. I like walking around those environments as well as when you're zoomed out.
Yeah, everything had the lighting in that game is excellent. Like there is whenever you are getting hit or shoot an enemy, there is this like hatcheting line thing that happens, almost like a screen tear effect that happens that
Sure,
is
yeah,
really
yeah.
effective. And then like you said, there are these like first person moments, and there's also these moments where it's like almost animated, and it goes on to your character, and you kind of like see kind of like almost a hand-drawn art style thing, but it's still made in that that like suit, that pixel art filter that is kind of what gives it its true effect and kind of really makes it look like an old PlayStation 1 game.
Yeah.
And then I also want to bring this game up for music. I think
Okay.
this has incredibly eerie sound design throughout, and the music really helps along move that along. So what they do is this it's mostly a like classical soundtrack, but they must run it through a tape delay or a tape deck or something like
That's
that, and it
cool.
gets this really cool like 90s like fuzzy sort of sound effect that makes it just sound creepy. And the music's really good. Like I said, it's full on classical music throughout the entire game. But they put all of these audio layers on top of it that give it this warbled kind of off uncomfortable sound that it's just like,
That's cool.
okay, like this is something that should sound familiar, but it sounds just off to the point that it's like making me uncomfortable. Really, really cool idea with that, and not something I've really, I think, heard before. I've heard people run stuff through tape delays to make stuff give that experience, but I think using classical music for that was even like a pretty cool step further in making it just really eerie throughout. Yeah, I love the way that game looks, and definitely love the music in that game.
Cool. Moving on, I'm going to throw this one out there for visuals, A Plague Tale Requiem. This is, of course, like I think at the top of visuals right now would be like those Sony first-party studios. They have insanely huge teams that are making insanely good-looking games, but A Plague Tale Requiem is able to look the exact same quality, and they are a smaller team. It's very impressive. I mean, they're a very impressive team in general. They like do Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is a crazy game in terms of the scale of it. But
Beautiful.
A Plague Tale looks amazing. This is another one too where it looks good for how gross it is at times in a very Scorn-ish sort of way. But yeah, I think it's the different locations. The island is a very beautiful kind of haven that you go to in the game, and that just looks amazing. The level of detail there is insane. When you're just sailing on the open waters, that looks great. And when you're deep down in the caves below and there's rats everywhere, it also looks really good. So this is just one of the most impressive games from a fidelity standpoint. I like the designs of the characters, the costumes and stuff like that. At least for the main cast. Maybe the guards are kind of boring, but yeah, this is definitely just for the fidelity over art style. I would say this is one of the best looking games. The lighting is insane too. I'm sure there's some ray tracing going on there, but yeah, it looks great.
That game looks like it had that looks like a hell of an engine. It's one of those where it's like
Yeah.
Absolutely looks like just hyper detailed in the same way that like we could talk about Horizon or God of War. Like these
Absolutely.
are just some insane.
It's in that conversation, which in itself is super impressive.
Absolutely. I have one major one left out of stuff that like really blew me away this year. And it's one I'm surprised we both skipped over for so long. Tunic.
Yeah, of course it's on my list too. I just going in a weird order here.
Yeah. So am I. I'm jumping all around. Tunic is just like if it reminds me so much of Fez, which I always thought was like another game that was absolutely beautiful, but just these gorgeous like isometric landscapes, and every different zone you go into, especially like when you go into like the dark areas and stuff like that, that game has just this beautiful like voxel like or very not like 100% voxely, but obviously when you're like hitting stuff, voxels will pop out. Art style, like I think people could like relate it to like almost like a Lego set or something like that. Like it's a really hard game to explain for me, but
I was watching a documentary on it at one point, and they showed what the game would look like just in the classic like isometric style, which you think it is, and then they compared that to like this weird filter that they have on the game that kind of punches it all into one layer in a way to give it more of that style, and it's like it is a night and day difference. That little detail changes so much about it. When I saw that, my mind was blown. I was like, oh, this must be just a classic isometric, but they're also able to, through that style, able to get you have a lot more visual information on the screen at the same time too, rather than like a smaller screen where you can't see a ton. Obviously, they're trying to fill you with tons of things on the screen because there's hidden stuff everywhere. But yeah, I agree. This game is so beautiful.
Super high contrast and everything. Some of the lighting in this game is incredible. Like when you're in the
forest,
like
a kind of a dreamy sort of filter over thing.
It
also fits like what the story is too, which is cool.
And one of my favorite parts of the art is its menus. It has one of the coolest little like menu styles I've seen in a video game, where it like almost looks like a original Nintendo pamphlet you would get with the actual game, and that's kind of how you effectively play the game or find a lot of the secrets in the game, as well as like you end up filling out like the notes section of the pamphlet as you're playing through the game. So like it almost looks like you're like looking at a Super Mario World like game manual, and I don't know, that's just the game is so intentional in its nostalgia that I think that's such a like fun nod. Obviously it's a Zelda like, but the art style, that like kind of chibi 3D thing that they go for is really well done, while adding all of these cool visual layers of like we mentioned earlier, like the voxels, that kind of like dreamy kind of like almost like smear layer. It almost, I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like somebody put like a thin layer of Vaseline over the camera or something like that. But then, on top of that, just like amazing lighting for a game like this.
I agree. Yeah.
Really, really cool moments of just like being in a place with trees and seeing bits of sun shine through the tree line. And just one of those art styles or art directions that you just see one small like look at it and it really does speak for itself. I think this game was on the tip of people's tongues for so long, off of visuals alone. Like people were like, oh, that game looks cool. The same way that I don't know, a lot of those games end up in one of those like teaser trailer rapid fires and on a showcase, and that's the one that everybody latches onto just because they're like, what was that? That looks so cool.
Absolutely.
And it looks that cool throughout. Tunic, one of the best looking games of the year, I'd say.
It's going in music too. We'll come back to the music on it. We'll save that.
Sure is.
I have a few more here. I think some of them will be kind of quick hits, but a couple ones to highlight for sure would be. You played this one too, Norco. I'm curious what you think about this one. For me, this was another pixel art game that looks fantastic. I think maybe where it maybe falls a bit short is the character designs and the faces and stuff. But for me, it's those environments, like when you go to your house and just looking at the level of detail there is super impressive. I like the lighting of it and the layers that they're able to achieve with it. So I really liked the look of Norco. This is another one where I had it in music, but I can't remember why. So
Norco's soundtrack is very good.
Okay,
that is one that I
will
continue to talk about. Norco is another one that has like kind of a pseudo pixel art thing going on as well. I think Norco fell apart with the character designs for me also, and that's kind of the reason.
The faces,
they're a little strange looking. But sometimes you end up with these environments, and there's like a big face in the sky or something like that, and I think those look really cool. When you're looking at the environments pulled way back, I think these just like areas look excellent. But then when you're like looking at that menu that has like the tree of all the characters and it's just like a smiley face, I was just like, okay, there could be a little bit more here. There's times when that game looks absolutely beautiful, and there's times when I'm like, this was on Newgrounds.
Which does
I love Norco.
What the game is trying to do, because for a certain game that could actually be a very effective thing. Not for Norco in the story. It's
I think that game looks really, really cool sometimes, and there's times when it definitely falls apart a little bit for me. That's why the only reason it didn't make it on there. But it is 1,000,000% on my music list.
Okay, we'll circle back on that. Let's see here. Okay, I'm trying to think which ones I actually really want to fight for, and those are the ones that I would shout out in this case. So I'm just reorganizing a bit. Okay, I think I'm going to fight for these 3. So I'll get these, and then I'll quickly rifle off the other ones. Tinykin, so very much like Grounded. This is another game where you would play a tiny little character in a regular size world. This one's different. Instead of being first person like Grounded and very kind of high detail, it's so the opposite. You're inside of a house, going through different rooms of the house. Very much like a Pikmin kind of game. In both that setting, but also in terms of the actual gameplay itself. I love Tinykin. It has a bit of that Cult of Lamb aspect too, where the characters are kind of a 2D sprite in this 3D world. But I loved going through these levels. I think I'll talk about this game deeper in best levels in that episode. But I also really like the art style. I think it was just super fun going through these different locations. And they were able to bring them all to life. So I'm gonna put that one on the list.
This is a game that I heard a lot of people talk about in the beginning of the year, and I did not touch. And now dig into it any deeper. And now I'm looking at it, and I get why you're talking about this in best visuals. It's
on Game Pass. Check it out.
It's
super fun.
Cool looking. It's very cool looking. The like Saturday morning cartoon energy is awesome in this.
Yeah. Another one that I know this is maybe just a me thing, which this game is in general. We reviewed this one together. Was Weird West. I love pretty much everything about Weird West. We're going to talk about that one in the coming episodes, but particularly the art style really worked for me. We actually talked about this in the episode itself, how you can tell that this is a smaller indie team and this is their first game in a lot of ways, where there is a lot of detail in the game that they're kind of faking. The specific example we gave was like planks of wood in the game just literally have like squiggles on them, like literal squiggles. Like there's no iteration to it. It's like, we got to put some detail in this. Let's do the quickest swiggle we can. But it totally works for me for what the game is. I love that about it. I think that the character designs, like the portrait art they do, is really cool there.
Fantastic in this.
From the, like, I don't know, I just love a good isometric going through a town city, and I really like that. The Western setting of it is very cool. Even down to the UI elements, I think look really awesome. So I love the look of Weird West. It's a Western game that's kind of weird, and it's able to bring that to life in a big way. So shoutouts to Weird West.
Yeah, kind of like Borderlands art style on the game itself, and then but the character portraits are super cool.
And I think maybe the biggest hidden gem on my list that I've not heard any other gaming podcast or anyone else talk about, but I covered because I thought it was really cool, is Serial Cleaners. This came out in September. Another isometric game, actually. This game, I'm just going to say aesthetics, this is going to go in music as well, is one of the most interesting games this year. I think the gameplay is middling at times. I did really enjoy it. I played through the whole thing. We'll talk about it again in levels. But I love the visuals of this. From the isometric side of it, it is very stylistic in that it's kind of muted in the color schemes. It's kind of dirty in a way, which very much fits for what the game is and the setting of it, and that you're cleaning up crime scenes and just doing the dirty work. So it fits in that way. But I think for me, what elevates it to being like one of my favorites, and I might fight for in the top 5, is the things in between. It's the loading screens. It's the kind of, I guess, the maybe cutscenes or something like that, that is where like the 90s element of it just like is layered on over top in a really big way. I just love some of these kind of load screens and stuff like that really just in between the levels kind of put you in that world in such a big way. And then on top of all that, the music, it can't be kind of left out of this conversation too, because it has this kind of, at times, very jazzy themes, at other times very kind of hip-hop, but very much in the 90s realm of things. Different characters kind of have their own sort of, not necessarily themes, but their own kind of style to them, where one character has like more techno-y themes, one character is more jazzy, one of them is more hip-hoppy in their levels. So that part of it too brings the characters to life in a big way. So yeah, I love the aesthetics of Serial Cleaners. Very much a hidden gem, and I don't think it's a game for everyone, to be fair, in terms of the gameplay of it. But for me, who likes stealth games and games that are a bit weird and goofy, it's absolutely really, really, really cool experience. So shout out to that
this
one.
is something that was on my radar and fell off of it somehow, but I'm peeking at a trailer of it right now. And if you are a fan of the way that Disco Elysium looks, this is
definitely in that realm.
Gonna be up your alley too. It definitely has a lot of that same charm. It looks cool. I understand
cool
this one. I would, if you started fighting for this, I'd have a hard time fighting back. It looks very cool.
Let me do some quick hits here. I don't think I'm gonna fight for these, but I did have a bunch more on my list. One is Loot River. This game actually ended up disappointing me greatly, but it had a very cool concept. But I love the visuals of it. It is pixel arty, but not necessarily. It's, I don't know. There's a lot of pixels, so it almost like has higher detail at times. But I think it looks super cool in the dungeon crawling aspects. Stacklands is another interesting game, which is essentially just like a city builder strategy game, but all of it is on like this green background and cards. You're just slapping cards down for various things. Interesting looking game. Rainbow Six Extraction. This might sound like a weird one. I honestly am shouting this out because
that came out.
Yeah, it came out in January. I think it was like the first new game I played on Game Pass. Once again, check it out. But I think for me, what was so cool about it was it had that StarCraft Zerg element to it, where there's kind of creep that spreads across the game, and that part of it, how it would take over these. I mean, that's so much different in this game than it is in StarCraft, where it's taking over these 3D environments and climbing up the walls and over obstacles in the room. It was very cool. And I mean, that game is a big AAA game. Like, it looks just, the fidelity of it is there. And then it has that really cool element to it. A couple other pixel art games. Not that we need to limit pixel art games, but I think other ones stood out to me more. But Chinatown Detective Agency looks great. Dome Keeper, I just played this last week. I love the color scheme, particularly in Dome Keeper. Just black, this very specific shade of purple, some kind of orange in there. Looks really, really interesting. Curse to Golf as well. This is a kind of a Shovel Knight-y 16-bit sort of pixel art game. Looks awesome. And just a couple more here. Sniper Elite 5. This one has like no art style to it. It's just like realistic looking, but in the same way that Hitman is very impressive visually, Sniper Elite 5, like the fidelity is fantastic, and some of the locations are just these grand castles with many, many levels to them, and exploring them is great. So I think the aesthetics really stood out to me, even if it's kind of a boring, army man like killing Nazi style.
The Mortal Kombat X-ray attacks on people's nuts is pretty good in that game. Whenever you do a sniper shot, is pretty fun.
That's definitely an element to it as well, that they put way too much detail into certain body parts in that way. And I think my last one, just as a quick shout out, is Rogue Legacy 2. I really like what they did here, where the first one was pixel art and this one they went for 3D art, which was pretty much just a decision to so they could make it easier, because pixel art is very expensive and this 3D art is easier to do. But it ends up having a very weird and interesting art style, because it is very much a 2D game. And in that Futurama-y sort of way, certain elements of it look 3D, even though everything is 3D at all times, as far as I know. I once again watched a documentary on that. It is bizarre looking at how those characters actually look, how they made it, because like the proportions are all janky so that it looks, it looks good to the player, but behind the scenes it's super messed up and how they were able to achieve that. But I think it's cool that they evolved the first game's art style where it still looks like a sequel to that, even though it's completely different art style. And some of the boss designs and enemy designs are particularly interesting in that game as well.
Super, like, still very recognizable as Rogue Legacy, despite making a big shift.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to those characters, I think.
So with that, let's take our second ad break here, and then we'll come down and we will dwindle this list of what is many, many games down to a top 5. So we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Writing down that note for the timer. I'm going to bring this up on screen. We have a lot of them here. Music's down there at the bottom. We have... I'm going to quickly rifle this off for the audio listeners. God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Cult of the Lamb, Trek to Yomi, Stray, Triangle Strategy, Live Alive, Citizen Sleeper, Roller Drome, Neon White, Mothman 1966, Pentiment Grounded, Scorn, Elden Ring, Hyper Demon, Immortalities, Sifu, TMNT Shredder's Revenge, Signalis, Plague Tale Requiem, Tunic, Norco, Tinykin, Weird West, and Serial Cleaners. I don't know how many that is. That's probably 25-ish games.
Good looking year.
A good looking bunch, and we got to dwindle that down to a top 5. We could start off by cutting things. We could start off, is there anything that you feel needs to be a lock? Where do you want to go first here?
Let's go in cut mode for a little bit, and then we'll start locking some stuff.
I'm just going to put this down here so I don't forget about it.
I will cut only games that I spoke of, just to make it not a
hey, if there's any that I mentioned, you Google and you're like, that's ugly, then like,
no way. Well, okay, so one that we both mentioned, but I was like, hey, did you even put it on there?
Which one?
Norco make? Oh yeah, so I think we can get rid of Norco. That's a game that I think has beautiful parts, but as a whole, kind of limits the experience a little bit as far as visuals go.
Sounds good. Let's see. I did a quick screenshot of Hyper Demon. I just want to ask, is that like a top 5 contender for you? Because I can look at a couple screenshots, but I think seeing it in motion is like probably the right way to do it. But that's just one that out of this list, I did not know anything about it before 20 minutes ago. So
no worries. Hyper Demon is one of the coolest visual experiences of the year, but like you are experiencing it in 20-second increments over and over.
Let's keep it for now because it sounds.
Dude, let's watch like maybe while we're working through this, you have a little like YouTube video running on the side. And you can see this game in motion because it's gnarly. It is
I will
absolutely absurd.
I am looking this up. I'm just gonna have this on my side screen as we're talking about stuff. But I think for me, a couple of cuts that I would be happy to make from my suggestions. Immortality, I mentioned why I think it's cool, but I don't think it's going to be a top 5 in terms of visuals. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think that game, same as Her Story, have like really neat visual ideas, but it's an F&V game at the end of the day. Yeah. If you want to watch a movie, it's a movie. It's a good looking movie.
Yeah. And then I don't think you're kind of with me on this one with Weird West. And even when I look at Weird West, I feel like it is very similar to Serial Cleaners, but I would go Cleaners if I had to pick one of them. So I think that might be an easy cut on the list here.
Okay, yeah, I feel comfortable with that. I do think, like, once again, as far as like character portraits, it's some of the best on the entire list. But maybe not one that rises to the top with this group.
I want to keep Hyper Demon on the list for now. This is very seeing this in motion is a trippy experience. So we're keeping that on the list. That's too cool to cut.
I just wish you would. The only thing, like, it'll end up maybe making its way closer to the top and then get knocked off only because you're gonna see the same thing over and over and over again.
Moving forward, I think once again, Mothman 1966. I talked about why it's cool, but I'm happy to drop that one. We got to make a lot of cuts here, so I'm just looking at the weakest of the bunch. I'm gonna bring up 2 that You
I got
suggested
it up.
both of these.
Yeah, that's
But
fine. That's fine.
I want to bring them up, which is Pentiment and Cult of the Lamb, where I think for Cult of the Lamb I'm more into. For Pentiment, I understand why you are where you are, but I am not there. Now, of course, this is a collective list, so we're trying to look at your opinion, my opinion, and both of our collective opinion. But I think for me, I don't know. It's not one of my favorites of the year.
Right. I think the moments that are really impressive in Pentiment come maybe few and far between, but stylistically, I do think that game is
super unique.
Unlike it's so unique, but I understand it is up against some very, very difficult games. I would get rid of Cult of Lamb before Pentiment, but I think because we have so many to get rid of, maybe it's both. Maybe I can comfortably move both.
We can leave it for now. We can come back to that in a bit.
So I want to throw a bit of a Hail Mary here because this is one that I also put on the list, but I have games that I would fight for over this. I think I'm okay with Stray going.
Oh.
Even though that's what I was saying. This one's maybe one of those games that I think people loved the visuals of, but we're going down to 5, and I would take a few of these over Stray personally, of some of the ones that I recommended.
Yeah, I think so. When I think about Stray, and I agree with everything you had said about it when you pitched it, to me there are 2 areas in particular that really stood out, but I know that I'm going to be bringing those up in levels, and I'd be more happy to talk about them as the level experience, and that includes, of course, the visuals of it. So I think I'm actually with you, because I also think there are certain parts in Stray that are kind of uninteresting in their visual style. I think if it was constantly one after another, each location blowing my mind, I might be more hesitant. But I think I can be with you here once again, because we got to dwindle this down to 5. Whoa, I did some weird stuff there. But yeah, let's get rid of Stray. We'll see you again later. Stray.
And tell me how you feel about this one. I think I'm comfortable letting Roller Drome go. I think Roller Drome, I know. So we talked about how I don't know. I think that art style is still very, very cool, but I'm blanking on the name of the game.
Sable,
yeah. Sable, I still think did it so much better that it really did kind of take all the wind out of its sails. That 24 FPS thing was incredible. Also, the great part about Sable is it was much more varied, whereas you were just in these small environments for periods of time in Roller Drome.
That's a good point. I feel like Sable too. We talked about this, where there is such a difference.
Gliding around, and
time of day also changes. You can be in one place and it looks like a totally different game, and I think that was very impressive. Whereas Roller Drome is static in that way. So I think I'm with you.
Cool looking game though.
Yeah.
Super cool looking game. Would just love more than some ramps to look at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's walls, there's ramps, and there's rails. There's not much more than that. So that's fair. And I think actually the enemy design too is maybe kind of not that interesting. So I think that's a fair cut. Moving along, I want to get your take on the 2D HD games, because I think not that we need to limit it, but I think I'd be happy to just have one as our champion for that engine, so to speak. So I think when I look at them, I think Triangle Strategy, in terms of the quality, is higher fidelity. When I think about the lighting on the water and just the lighting in general and sunlight and whatnot, is better. But I think because of the variety in Live, you get to have a lot more fun with it. And also, too, a big part with Octopath and why that game looks so great is because, the pixel art enemies and the bosses look so, some of the best I've ever seen in any game. It just looks so, so good. And Live gets to do that. Triangle Strategy it's simple soldiers, and it does not really get much deeper than that in terms of weird enemy variety. So I think Live wins out that argument, where there are some bosses in that game that I can still vividly picture in my mind because of just how big and weird and grotesque and strange they were. So I almost want to side with Live for the variety's sake of it.
I'd say you're the expert here.
Okay.
We will keep Live alive, and then like
I don't even feel like that's a shoe-in for top 5 like Octopath
that's what
Traveler
I'm
would have
thinking.
been.
That's no. That's what
Yeah.
I think that Octopath Traveler did what both of these are trying to do so much better. Still, I think the worlds
I can actually agree with that, which
in
is you would think
those
that they would have time to iterate, and it's not the same teams making these things, of course, but it's the same engine from the same publisher. So that's
yeah. There's just I think Live Alive kind of has to hold itself to the previous game, right? The original game, so it might have some struggles there, and then once again that kind of like isometric tile based gameplay in triangle strategy doesn't give a lot of opportunity for increased detail. Whereas Octopath Traveler is making that from scratch. They were able to do some like really crazy stuff with this, especially with the character, like the boss battle sprites.
Oh my
being
God,
these just
so
like
good.
it looks incredible. So
do you think you're picking up the sequel in February?
Yeah, definitely. I ought to beat the original. That's another one that I got like halfway through and then put down.
I don't think I'm going to go back to it, but I think I might pick up the new one without finishing that. I mean, it seems like a separate story. That's a tangent. We don't have time for that tangent.
Yeah,
I will cut another one of mine, which is Tinykin. If we look at that theme, it is very different than Grounded, but if I'm picking one of the two, I'm going Grounded all day. And I think Tinykin, I like the environments, and I will talk about it more in levels, but in terms of actual graphical quality of it or art style, I think it's lesser than the other games we got here.
Right. You didn't cross it off, but you can get rid of Call to Lamb.
Okay.
I think it's safe for me to remove that one. You are just going in between a level and your camp over and over again. It's overwhelmingly charming throughout, and I really, really do love the way that game looks. But it's there are games here that give you so much more variety and how impressive they look, and I don't think that necessarily offered that as much.
I think both of us side on art style over fidelity just in general.
Totally.
So when I look at, there's 3 games here, Plague Tale, Horizon, and God of War, which aren't necessarily a unique art style. I'm looking at those as the next Jenga blocks that we can push out here.
Right.
I think I would. God, this is a hard.
That's a hard 3 because I tell you what, I'll just say it, the game I liked the least looks the best.
Horizon, yeah.
I would say Horizon might even be a lock for top 5.
Okay.
Personally, it is it is like the killer app for a PlayStation 5 right now. That game looks insane. HDR in that game is beautiful. I
agree, and I played Horizon on my old TV when things weren't looking as sharp. I played God of War on my new TV, still PS4, and then Plague Tale Series X on my new TV, 120 frames, 4K, and I still agree with you. And not to say that they're all the exact same, but they are definitely born from the same parent, you could say, in that way. So
absolutely.
Should we, for the sake of narrowing this down, cut out God of War and Plague Tale? Is that an okay thing to do? I'm at least okay to get rid of Plague Tale here. Actually, am I? I don't even think I'm ready to do that yet. God, it's funny. I brought that up as like the next
conversation. We opened up this conversation, and like I don't want to get rid of God of War or Horizon. Like I have a personal top 5 written down. And both of those are in it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's not go there. Let's move over to. Is Citizen Sleeper one of those top 5 for you?
Sadly, no.
Okay.
It only is because of the levels in that game. I think if the levels were as beautiful as the character art was, Citizen Sleeper would be an absolute lock as well, because the character designs in that game are amazing. But you are just clicking from point to point on this big ship. It's stylistically cool, but nothing you weren't getting out of like an FTL or something like that. So I'd actually feel comfortable getting rid of Citizen Sleeper here.
Another one, Neon White. Is that a top
I was
5
gonna
level for you?
let you release Neon White next, actually. I think Neon White oozes style. And if once we're having the music conversation, it's gonna be completely different.
It's coming up again.
But I'd say just visually alone, that's maybe one of the weakest points, even though I still think it is incredibly stylish and cool looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right.
If I counted correct, I think we are down to 15. So now it feels like we cut a ton of stuff and we still have to keep going here. But that's why this year, honestly, we probably could have been in top 10 for these categories, but we've already decided on the top 5. So let's make it hard on ourselves and make that happen.
It's a tough nut here. I would like for you to defend Shredder's Revenge.
Okay.
I think that game looks really, really great, but it also looks like a great remaster almost.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I think for me, out of all the pixel art games this year, and there's games like Signalis has pixel art as part of it, but you wouldn't describe it as a pixel art game in the same way that TMNT is. For me, I love the color palette of that game. I think is just so fun and colorful and vibrant. It's the detail in the locations outside of just the character specific stuff. It's the animations, which look fantastic. The overworld is super fun, where you have your little car and you're driving around the city, which looks amazing. So yeah, for me, it's hard because once again, like we've mentioned a couple times, there's nothing else on this list that looks like TMNT. And not that there needs to be a token, pixel art game on the list or anything. Right. But like, man, this game looks fantastic. So I don't know if I'm ready to cut it yet.
Okay. No worries.
But if you're passionately against it, then obviously it's worthy. I think
I'm not against it. I'm just looking at it against the rest of this list, and I'm just wondering if it holds up. Like, if we have to have a pixel art game that is going to rise to the top, I think we're pulling ourselves in a couple different directions. It's
I'll throw another easy kick for me would be Trek to Yomi. I shouldn't say easy kick, but I think if I had liked that game more, maybe I'd be more passionate to fight about it here, fight for it, I should say. But I feel like I gave it its due, and I'm happy to let it go. It is unique among the bunch here, but I want 5 other games, 10 other games before I want Trek to Yomi to win.
Right.
I'm gonna ask 2 games that I don't. Obviously, I know. I've watched that trailer for Hyper Demon now, but bringing up Scorn as well. I guess just trying to get your temperature check on those, as I'm not. Like, I can watch a trailer for Hyper Demon, but you're going to be, of course, a better, more educated view on that. And then, Scorn as well, which, once again, I've seen the trailers. I can agree with that. It looks great, but I haven't played it, so I can't fight for it.
Right.
So how do you feel about those 2?
Hyper Demon, I already kind of walked back a little bit earlier, so I think I'm more comfortable letting Hyper Demon go. I think Hyper Demon is one of the most original art styles I've
super
seen. Cool. It's really, really neat, but once again, it is one thing consistently. Scorn is got some of the most, I want to say, beautiful sometimes, and that's the absolute worst word to refer to.
That was a Plague Tale 1 for me. Was like, this game, you're walking through just a graveyard of dead bodies. It is absolutely disgusting, but it feels so visceral and good to do that because it's so effective. So I understand where it's hard to talk about that one.
Scorn has impeccable art design, I think, is the way that I like, where it is. But when it comes to moving around that game and the way that enemies move around, it feels old in a strange way. But just the detail in all of the just the walls and all of the switches you're sticking your hand into, and the way that things kind of just snugly fit around your fingers, and everything being just a little bloody, a little moist is pretty
Yeah, moist is kind of the go-to word for Scorn, isn't it?
So it really just kind of still like gets me. I don't know if I'm ready to let Scorn go.
Okay. I'm gonna poke at another one then, which is Sifu, because I think it looks totally fine, but I don't know. I don't. To me, it's nothing too special. Now, obviously, a big part of that I think is that some of those levels you described sound absolutely amazing, and that
Yeah.
switch for boss fight sounds great. I am not good enough at a game. I did not get to those points. I got like halfway through the club, and that looked really cool. The first level, I don't think it had too much of an intriguing look to it. So I don't know. Does it get so good in those later levels that it elevates it to like a top 5 level for you?
I think it ends up being a best levels conversation more than it does. Because like I wouldn't say like I think the art style is great, but wouldn't say like independently every level is fantastic. Like I'd say that first level is probably one of the lesser exciting ones. You're kind of just going through these slums, and it's pretty and cool. And some of the stuff's like overgrown, and there's like that bamboo forest that you're fighting in. And all that's really neat, but like the really impressive stuff is in like 2 or 3 of the later levels, and it really is surrounding more so the boss fights than it is the levels themselves. So I think I'm comfortable letting Sifu go. The next one I want to talk about is going to hurt you, and I'm sorry, because I really love this game as well, and it was a surprise for me. Grounded. I think Grounded is really cool at setting setting up the setting. I was like, man, I'm stumbling over this one. But and being this like small being in around all of these like larger than life blades of grass, and but I think there is some of that like Fallout Obsidian jank moments, like having a mosquito fly into a wall and getting stuck in a wall, and like
oh man, I am like abusing the game's janky collision all the time to just kill monsters.
So like there's moments like that I think maybe, and like I'd say a game like that for it to stand up against some of these, it would have to come in from like a little bit further in a fidelity conversation. Like I have that game cranked all the way up on my computer, and it looks good, but not like stellar. I think it's really riding on its art design and just kind of the setting itself more than it is being visually gorgeous. Like it's just like, oh, this is a cool place to be. I like this setting. I think this is another one where it's like you're more talking about best levels than you are necessarily or like best spaces.
Yeah, if we're talking about best world design, best open world, like that would be a different argument.
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
So I hear you. You made a good point. I'm happy you made it this far. Grounded. We'll see you again later.
We'll talk about more Grounded for sure.
You're literally really getting down to it here. I think this is 11 games at this point. I think at this point I would be okay to say goodbye to Live Alive, only because there is like some sequences in that game that like don't look great. Like other ones are so good that it almost like carries it, but I think there's a bit of an inconsistency sometimes between how good the characters look and how good some of the environments look in terms of just fidelity, where things look kind of blurry in the background at times. I think ultimately it's just this game looks so similar to Octopath Traveler, and it's weaker than that. So it's like how like I guess that could be a weird argument.
Same thing we had with like Roller Drome, where it's like it is this reminiscent of something we really love, but not quite that thing we love.
So let's get rid of that one.
I will sacrifice Pentiment.
Just like that, Obsidian is out of here.
Yeah, sorry guys. But I will say if you aren't interested in playing through Pentiment all the way, at least look at some of those kind of like big murals or mosaics that are in Pentiment. Gorgeous artwork. The artists in that game definitely just like did some beautiful drawings throughout that game. That are not necessarily a major piece of moving through the world in gameplay. It's just like, hey, wow, like I clicked on an art piece and it's very pretty. So
when I look through all of these now, it's very difficult for me to say, "Oh, look at this one. Let's cut that."
Yeah.
Right? We've kind of talked about all these now, with the exception of I guess Tunic and Elden Ring. I mean, we mentioned in our initial pitch, but we haven't circled back to them, and it's like I don't know. I can't circle back to them to cut them. Is there anything at this point that for you? Is there a number one? Is there something that like you need to see locked here?
Horizon. It's like it's so weird to fight for that game because I am so mid on it. Like I did not have strong feelings about that game outside of damn, this game is pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted to play that game just to see it more and feel like I got my money's worth out of my television.
Yeah. Yeah, there are to me particular moments, and I'll talk about some of these sections and levels. It's hard to talk about an open world game and narrow it down to levels, but I think I've done that for a couple locations that stand out to me. But yeah, there are particular moments in that game that just look insanely good. The character designs are cool. The monsters look cool. So I hear you, and it's funny that we're both like, yeah, this has got to be in here when we both don't really like the game itself, but we're doing best visuals here at this point. So let's move it up for now. It's not locked there, but we can kind of leave it up there, see how we feel about it.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like there's something. It's weird because I think if I go back to our review that me and Kirkland did for Plague Tale, I think maybe one of the things we praised the most was, wow, this game looks amazing. One of the best looking games I've ever played in my whole life. And for some reason, when I'm looking at this list here, it's like the next one I want to cut. I don't know why that is. And you haven't played it as well, so maybe that's part of it as well.
I can't fight for it or against it. This is one where I have to trust your judgment more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
part of it is that really grotesque moment I was talking about is like from the first one. And I think still that is like the most visually striking moment of either of the games for me. I also like the first game more than the second one, so that's part of it as well. But yeah, I think we can get rid of that. I almost feel like Horizon is holding its torch in a way, which feels almost wrong to give it to like the bigger, more popular game and not the smaller game that's climbing up. But we got to make some tough cuts here. So let's get rid of Plague Tale. Where are you going next?
I think there is a conversation between. I'm upset about saying this because I don't even want to even bring this game up as being not something in the top 5, but I'm just looking at the rest of this. There's a conversation to be had between Signalis and Serial Cleaners.
Ooh,
and I think both of these games look incredible in their own right, but maybe don't stand up with what else is left here.
Mm-hmm.
Personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me know what you think about that. I think Signalis has like a really, really like cool art style, but like I'd say maybe Signalis isn't pulling its weight against the rest of this stuff, and it is just sheerly on mood for me. And like I don't really know
that's a good point.
how to put that somewhere else outside of GOTY, maybe. Right. So it's hard to fight for that in best visuals, even though it is one of the best atmospheres.
I almost feel like parts of that game are, to me, like immediate lock territory. But then there's other elements that I'm kind of mid on. Like, I don't know. I think the map isn't that great, or some of those pixel art sequences I actually don't think work super well. Other ones do, certain character stuff. But even just like getting certain props, and some of them look super interesting. Other ones, I don't know. It's just like very basic in a way. So there's maybe an inconsistency with it. But when I think about what is like 90% of the experience and walking around those hallways in the zoomed out camera, you're right. Like that is so effective, the visuals of that. And even when you go into those first person sequences, that kind of intentionally PS1 vibe to it, like works super well for me, even if it's pretty low detail at that point. So I'd say that one's less consistent than I'd say everything else on this list, I guess. Actually, that way.
We already have a game on this list where you can walk through or jump in bloody holes. So maybe we
only have room for one bloody hole jumping game. So.
Signalis.
Let's make the tough decision and drop it.
A stellar one though. But let's talk Serial Cleaners now.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
this
are we
one.
at? 1, 2, 3, 4.
This one's
5,
tricky for me
7.
because if I'm gonna be critical of it, I think where it falls short is particularly the character designs. It's one thing is that like there's no moving of mouths when characters are talking, and there is voice acting, so it feels weird, and it's just like it's just a budget thing. It's just a small
Yeah.
indie team doing their best kind of thing. And so 90% of the time when you're playing the game and you're zoomed on the isometric view as you are, that's not an issue. But then when you zoom in, like certain elements of it don't look great. I think for me, I'm actually okay with cutting it in the essence that it's still in the conversation for music. I'm gonna bring up some levels, and one level in particular that like I don't know if I'll fight for because I have quite literally, how many levels do I have on my list? Just quickly spoil that. I have like 45 levels to talk about, and that's going to be a big episode. So I don't know if it's going to make top 5. That's pretty hard to do when you factor in your levels as well. So I think for the sake of what we're doing here, I can be happy with how far Serial Cleaners made it. And falling next to Signalis is, nothing to shake a stick at. So let's get rid
top
of it.
10.
Mm-hmm.
Those are top 10. That's yeah.
Dante, this leaves us with 5. If we, I'm going to remove the lock on Horizon and say we have 6 games left.
Yeah.
And we just got to pick which one we want to get rid of. As a reminder for the audio listeners: Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok, Scorn, Elden Ring, TMNT, Shredder's Revenge, and Tunic.
Man, we haven't talked about Elden Ring at all, and we don't have to.
Yeah, should we just lock that? Should we just lock that?
Yeah, one? Elden Ring is staying. That is one of the best worlds I've ever been in.
Limgrave alone is like potentially a top 5, and that's just one location.
So good. It looks so good all the time. Shooting space laser beams. Freaking what is it, Radovan? Man, I got to go back and play some Elden Ring.
Yeah. Well, there's that DLC coming, the Coliseum thing, right?
Yeah, that just came out today. Radon, like just coming down like a comet from the sky. There's just so many amazing.
The walkout moment for Lake of Liurnia.
Yeah.
Like when you first go up the lift, and I forget the name of that place, but it's more golden and regal kind of in its design.
When you see the tree up close for the first time, and oh my, there's
how scary Caelid is, the underground areas, the boss designs. Like, yeah, that's a lock. So there you go. There's one lock.
That game is just so cool visually, nonstop. I never wanted to put that game down.
I don't know how you're going to feel about this. I actually think my argument to cut something here would actually maybe go against God of War, strangely enough. Even though there's a ton of great looking locations, I mean, the quality of the cutscenes is truly on par with nothing else, and I have many characters to shout out when we get to that episode. But I don't know. I guess there's something about the variety of if we have the other games. There's something to me about like not to put all PlayStation, Sony exclusive games in one bucket, but like if I got to pick one, I'd pick Horizon if we're talking strictly visuals. So
when we're talking about that kind of like visual fidelity conversation, God of War looks like a PS4 Pro game. And Horizon Forbidden West looks like a PlayStation 5 game.
Yeah, I played both on my base PS4, but I understand that argument.
Screaming.
Yeah, it's getting rough out there for that old guy for sure.
That's so. It was. You know what it was going to be? It was going to be between God of War, TMNT, and Tunic.
Yeah,
which
that's a hard
crazy conversation.
If I had to cut another one and to leave the door open for you, strangely, I actually think it might be Tunic for me, where the music, I'm dying on that hill, but visually, while it's doing a lot of amazing things, actually, I don't think I really have anything negative to say other than that. Maybe the purple location I wasn't a big fan of visually, and like how bright the screen gets. I know it's very intentional, but it was just kind of annoying. But so I'm leaving the door open. If you want to see God of War, I think to me that's like the only other thing that I could see falling.
I'm thinking about not just like obviously best characters, but just like the way that the characters look in that game, and the way that like when you're like ripping stuff apart and ripping through people, it just looks so visceral. And like the mocap in that game is
It's insanely good.
It is so good. But when you talk about the environment designs, they're pretty levels, but it's
It's hard to say a bad thing about it for me, honestly. Like I'm trying to think of like an area that lets me down visually, and I'm like, oh, you know, I don't think I have one of those actually. Like level design, that's a whole nother story. But just in terms of visuals, God, it all looks every location looks great, and there is variety. I think maybe parts of it, it's like, okay, I'm going back to a location from God of War 2018, and I've seen this location before, so it doesn't wow me when I think about the Elven location or. Yeah, really just that one, to be honest. But
God of War has bad menus. Tunic has great menus.
Oh God, you know, actually, the pamphlet alone makes me want to go Tunic over God of War. That's the conversation. One of us could be the hero here and drop. I could drop TMNT. You could drop Scorn.
I can't get rid of Scorn.
I don't feel like I can get rid of TMNT.
I think it's God of War. I'm looking at Tunic in motion right now, and I'm like, damn, this game is so looking.
Should we get rid of God of War?
It feels wrong, but I think it's
going to come up many times, you know, to think of it that way. It's going to come up again.
Probably God of War. That seems weird. I feel like people will be screaming at us.
Honestly, this top 10, 15 of visuals, holy fuck. Like, I don't think this was as hard to narrow it down to the top 5 last year as this was.
I think this is a damn good list, though. I have one that I'm like a little like, all right, but I'm gonna let you have
Which is what?
It's just TMNT.
Yeah.
But I know you love it. I know, like, this is one of those things. I got Scorn, you got TMNT, we're even.
Yeah. I mean, it's some of the best pixel art I've seen in my entire life.
There you go. And like everything I looked when I like was like, all right, I'm gonna search through some TMNT footage. People were like, this game is gorgeous, blah 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 blah, and like I was like, all right, if I'm alone here, I'm not like I'm not saying it looks bad. I'm just saying it like it looks like a incredible looking Sega game. But that's cool.
It is cool. Our top 5 is Elden Ring, Horizon Forbidden West, Scorn, TMNT, Shredder's Revenge, and Tunic 5. Amazing looking games. Dante, let's take I assume our last ad break here, and then we will get into music, which we've already kind of half thrown nominations on there. We've got a few more. So let's take our last break here. We are back. Down to music. What we have so far is God of War Ragnarok, Cult of the Lamb, Stray, Triangle Strategy, Live Live, Citizen Sleeper, Roller Drome, Neon White, Grounded, Elden Ring, TMNT, Shredder's Revenge, Signalis, Tunic, Norco, Serial Cleaner. So, of course, all of those came up through visuals, but I actually don't have too many more outside of those, but I do have a couple. So I'm going to throw to you first. What else do you want to add on the list here?
Stranger of Paradise. Final Fantasy.
Ooh, okay.
Stranger of Paradise. That game has some really sick orchestral versions, remixes of old Final Fantasy games throughout time. It is like a incredible playlist of awesome Final Fantasy music, which is, as far as I'm concerned, some of the best music in video games. So, a weird ass game I happen to have a lot of fun with that I did not expect to. The music was surprising. Really, really cool. Some good jams to listen to while you scream chaos over and over and over again. That game is fucking ridiculous.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's funny when you first said that, I'm like, wow, I didn't hear much praise about that game, even from you. But then it's like, oh yeah, it's Final Fantasy. So of course the soundtrack is going to be just next level. So that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to throw out, might be a bit of a weird pick, but this is one of my favorite, I'm not going to say full soundtracks, but some of these songs have been like the most replayed for me this year, is 2 Point Campus. So,
2 Point Hospital of 2 Point Hospital fame.
Did you play that one?
I've never played any of the 2 Point games, but I'm very aware of them. Apparently they were like huge in Europe and like England. People love the 2 Point series. I've heard they're great. I did not play either though. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's a pretty decent tech or like tycoon builder sort of game. It good enough. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But to me, it was the music that stood out, and it was honestly the reason why I think I played it as many nights as I put it on just to jam around in there, is because the music is great. It's the setting of it is that you're kind of almost like a community college that you're building up throughout it and whatnot. So I think the music is able to capture that, where it's kind of gritty and I don't know. It just feels like any movie you've seen that is like, you know, set in college or something. Like it kind of has that vibe to it. It also has a bit of a 90s energy to it. But in particular, there's just a couple tracks that I've just had on repeat so many times over.
Nice.
They are just these beautiful, like jazzy tracks that go in and out of these like really sick solos into just like these great beats. Just like such a surprising soundtrack. I'll send you a couple songs after. One song in particular.
Yeah, please do.
Called Let's Lance. Everyone should look that up. It is so good. It just like jumps back and forth between like these very weird disparate parts, but it just like works so well. So shouts to 2 Point Campus.
The next one on mine, let's go. I'm just gonna go into JRPG land for a while because I feel like for some reason JRPGs always have some of my favorite music in video games. They're long and they're lengthy and they have to give you something nice to listen to along the way. Xenoblade 3, beautiful soundtrack. Lovely like pianos and flutes and like just incredible orchestral soundtrack throughout. Kind of on like if Elden Ring was like the darker, more brooding side of orchestral music this year, Xenoblade 3 has like more uplifting, brighter kind of I want to say like optimistic music. And then obviously every once in a while you get into a heavy boss fight and stuff starts to get a little jammy, and it's yeah, the music in that game is really, really fantastic. And I don't know, a great little addition to your journey as you're slogging through this 150-hour game. Really great like overland music and stuff like that. So Xenoblade 3, stellar orchestral soundtrack.
Love it. I'm just going to mention this. I'm not going to put it on the list. Nintendo Switch Sports. Put this on my list. I'm sure like the first Wii Sports and all those Wii games
they're incredible.
Amazing. I don't really remember Switch Sports in particular. I haven't played it in a few months, so hard for me to fight for it, so I'll cut it. I'll bring up one that just came out days ago, Midnight Suns. I love the music in this game. I mean, I love this game in general. Go back, check out me and Travis's review, 2 hours of just raving about how much we love this game. But particularly the music for me, actually, strangely, I don't think I mentioned it in the review just because there was so much. That review was very chaotic. It was very tangent heavy, and my notes were a mess, so I think I might have missed this. But it's of course doing that classic Marvel stuff of like hero music, fighting, all that good stuff. But for me, I think where it elevates is that a lot of time you're also just cruising around the Abbey, which is kind of this creepy sort of church / like building where these people are living. You're going through these dark woods, and there's a lot of witch-isms and like iconography in the game. And those moments, honestly, it remind me a lot of playing Fable, and just kind of the whimsy, the fantasy of that soundtrack is somehow like brought to life too in those moments of the game. So I think it's very impressive to me because it's doing very different things in its runtime, and I still have much more to go. So I think I'm sure I'm going to uncover some more cool tracks with certain boss fights or character themes and things like that. So really enjoying that soundtrack so far.
That those anthemic like that anthemic music when you're moving through any of those fights, especially when it's like a story boss fight, is awesome. And whenever a new character gets like announced, and it's that kind of I don't know, there's this like big epic moment when like they throw a character on the screen and you have this like almost like, I don't know, not chime or anything, but like this cool musical moment whenever a big character comes on screen too. Marvel was not something I thought about, but definitely one that I've been really enjoying the music in as well.
Sorry, I got a quick tangent, which is I feel very bad that I totally forgot to write Marvel Snap on both my visuals and music, but that game looks and sounds great. I feel really bad for this. I meant to bring it up for visuals, which is unfortunate because I actually have taken a bit of a turn. They had a recent patch that I'm not going to get into this tangent, but it really fucked up the progression, and it
want to
makes
talk
me
to you
sad.
about it. I wanted to talk to you about it. Well, maybe we'll do this. Maybe this will be an off air conversation. But I was really thinking about whether or not I was going to get the season pass again this time, and I was like, nope, definitely not this round.
Collection, what is it called? Collectors coins or tokens totally fucked up the game's progression, and it actually like it sucks that I still love playing the game, but that's a tangent for another day. The game also has great music. I love the visuals of it, the feel of throwing cards down. So
the Marvel Snap theme, that one that starts the second you start the game itself, is incredible. And I really thought about putting it in my music over and over and over again, but I can't for just one song. Right?
It's true. I think there's like 2 or 3 tracks in the whole game, as far as I can tell. So it doesn't have the
they're good ones.
The legs in that way.
They are good ones, and obviously you're getting a lot of that same vibe from Midnight Suns. So
sure, I think certain parts are able to. I think Snap is maybe more kind of like hip hop, which I thought was very fun, very high pace and all that stuff. But anyway, what's the next game? I actually only have one more, but what is the next game?
I have a couple. I think only 2 more. So Soul Hackers 2 is a Shin Megami Tensei game. So if you are familiar with Shin Megami Tensei, all of the music is some of the best RPG music that exists. I'd say this is not as good of a soundtrack as the Persona series, but it is really cool, like guitar-driven, synth-wave music. There's a lot of synth-driven soundtracks on this, so I feel like that's going to be a tough conversation when we really start getting into this. It's like best of the synth genre, but this one is like shredding throughout as well, which I think is
nice.
like really
fun.
Instead of going super heavy in the like sci-fi direction with their synthwave and going for atmosphere, it's going for just like, okay, here's a jam, which I think is super fun. One of those soundtracks you can just like listen to without. Almost reminds me of like maybe like a more guitar driven, like It Follows or something like that. It's pretty fun. Liked it a lot.
Cool. Sorry, was that 2 or Soul Hackers 2 or 3?
Soul Hackers 2. The original one's on the PlayStation 1.
Oh, wow. So that's
big gap.
Quite the jump. I didn't know that was a Shin Megami Tensei related thing. That's cool.
Yep. It doesn't say it on the title of the game, which is pretty wild, but it is. I
have one more here. And should be no surprise, Nintendo generally has great soundtracks. For me, the standout here, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Kirby has always had amazing music. Sometimes it's very, I'll say, cutesy and simple, and I think because of that, it's kind of understated. But then when I think about how much I've played Smash, and like whenever a Kirby song rolls through Fountain of Dreams, like, let's fucking go. Like, this is some of the best music in Smash Bros. And Smash Bros has a collection of hundreds, thousands of like best games and music all time. So
probably next to Final Fantasy 14 or alongside that, like best soundtracks of all time.
It's hard to like say Smash Ultimate has the best soundtrack because a lot of it's just pulling stuff, but there's also a ton of remixes. That aside, Kirby soundtrack's always great. This one to me really stood out where, of course, like the game is a bit darker in its setting. Like, it's Kirby set in like a post-apocalypse, right? So that's kind of weird. Now the game is still kind of cutesy and fun and mostly quite simple and has co-op and all that stuff. So it still is doing some of that score stuff. But there is a particular level for me, and there's other ones in the game, but this one really stood out. It's like a snowy bridge. And when I've looked up the song afterwards, when I even felt this when I was playing it, it is just like a 7-8 minute long song that is just ripping solos the whole time. It's like a kind of gross 70s guitar solo that goes into like this keyboard that's just popping off for like literal minutes of just shredding so fast. It's so jazzy. It's so good. I couldn't find it for months because Nintendo's pretty stingy about copyright and stuff, but the soundtrack is up on YouTube now, so you can listen to it. And so I was listening to it again this week, and it's like, man, the soundtrack in that game is fucking fantastic. There is a ton of music. That was the one song that really, really stood out to me. I remember when we were playing the level, I'm like, I don't know where the loop is here, but I swear this is just a never-ending set of solos. And then when I actually looked up the song, and it truly is like 8 minutes of just different solos, like each minute. It's was like, man, this is super cool. They went way harder than they needed to for
That's
this game and this particular level. So yeah, shout outs to Kirby's soundtrack. It's one of those great Nintendo soundtracks as far as I'm concerned.
Nice. That man, that's another reason I have to finally jump into that game.
Great.
One of my friends was like, "That's my favorite game of the year," and I was like,
"Damn!"
All right, I missed out. All right, my last one. I brought it up in my list and misspoke. But it is by far one of the coolest soundtracks this year. Is Metal Hellsinger.
Right. Yeah.
That game has the best metal soundtrack that I've heard in a long time as far as video games go, and has so many different features from like huge metal acts that I could not believe the people that they got. So like Randy Blythe from Lamb of God is in this. Matt Heafy from Trivium, Serge Tankian from System of a Down, Alyssa
You're just
White
naming like my partner's favorite artists back to back. We about to play this game together. That's cool.
Dennis from Refuse, James Fortin from Black Crown Initiate, like literally huge acts in metal, and they all did like one-off songs for this game. Like it's
can
not
you
like
play through them? Like, can you just pick which one you want, or is it linear and that you have to?
Once you play through the game, you can pick the level, and the level has its own music. And there's different like side levels, and I believe they do different versions or like remixes of the songs. Or you can
couldn't like just skip to like the Trivium level though.
No, it's not like. Well, I guess like even in Guitar Hero or something like that, you have to play through the game to unlock all of the songs. But once you have them all out, you can kind of play whatever level you want. It's just you couldn't pick like, hey, I want to play this level with this music. I don't think that's in the game. Yeah. At least not through. I beat it through once, and I played a couple of the side levels, but that was about it. Yeah, just ripping guitars throughout, like blast beats. Like I love metal. So this was an easy like recommendation as far as best music goes. And this year it's one of the cooler soundtracks with like actual artists that I've seen in a long time, outside of those games where you're just straight up playing songs by other artists. Especially the fact that their original works is pretty wild. They went hard and got some huge people to do this. That's one. Cool. Very cool stuff.
That's our list. I forgot to mention this, but our list from last year, I actually deleted out of my notes, but I wanted to bring this up, which is that I know we were very close to including this game, but we did not, which was Unpacking. It didn't make it in our list. Me and the rest of the GeekVerse
squad recently. Last year?
What's that?
Didn't we talk about Unpacking last year?
We did. What I'm saying is it didn't make it in our top 5.
Oh, word. Sorry.
But we did like all of our Spotify Wrapped for the year. My single most played song was a song from Unpacking, and that's like my biggest regret is that I didn't fight for it harder. I think it was because I hadn't played it recently enough or something, but it's like, man, I love that soundtrack. So I wanted to retroactively, throw that one
call it out
higher in the conversation. But
it's now our number one song of 2022 as well somehow.
Yeah, I wish. Well, funny you mentioned that because I debated doing this and I didn't include it, but we talked about this last year, which was that Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye was DLC for a game from a previous year. So like, where does it belong in the conversation for 2021? The composer of that game released like an extended soundtrack which has new songs that it's like an homage to the game. So the songs are not in the game, but it's Outer Wilds music and like some of the themes reprised. So I didn't put it on my list. That music is fantastic, as the rest of Outer Wilds songs are.
I don't think soundtrack DLC counts.
I know that was like that was a step too far. I couldn't justify. I knew you would have been like, Dylan, shut up. This is enough of your bullshit, man. So I ended up not going for that. But there we go. Have our list. That was pretty easy because we had a ton of these that were in visuals as well. So shout out to these games, both looking and sounding great. Bringing it up on screen here. I want to jump to this immediately, which is that I mentioned this is the biggest snub from the Game Awards. Tunic is one of the all-time great game soundtracks. This is one of the best soundtracks of all time. There is a ton of music in the game, but even just if you take a couple themes, the overworld, some of the different locations, it is, once again, that kind of synth wavy sort of thing we were talking about. This is one of the greatest all-time soundtracks for me. I want to lock this right away, and I'm hoping you're in the same boat
Yeah.
as me.
Easily.
Love it.
Easily. That one definitely has one of I told you there's a few games that did synths super well this year, and Tunic rises to the top of those, I'd say. I
So shout out to
have
that because it also made visuals, so now that's a double header here for tonight.
Yeah. Since we're locking one, I'd like to also lock one.
Okay.
Let's make this conversation a lot easier. We have to lock Neon White.
Yeah, I can agree with that actually.
I
Yeah.
think. Well, I am a huge Machine Girl fan to begin with, so I know that game is just specifically speaking to me. But that flying through those levels and hearing this just like incredible electronic music with this like barking, almost like screamy vocals is just so, I don't know, it's so fun and adds to like the style and the excitement of that game in such an impressive way. This is another one where like I will take this soundtrack and listen to it daily, no problem. Like I want to hear individual songs off of this, and it goes up against some of the like best Machine Girl albums, which is super cool. I think one of the best things Neon White does is its music.
Yeah. I can agree with that. I mean, I think for me, it's a testament to that this is not really my genre, and I don't think I would listen to this like outside the game necessarily. Maybe I will. Maybe add a few songs to my video game music playlist. But I love the music in this game. It adds so much to it. So I'm happy to lock that guy in there.
Yeah, if you like IDM at all, I know that's a kind of a niche genre of music, but if you're into IDM, you should definitely check out the Neon White soundtrack or Machine Girl in general.
Cool.
Super cool stuff. Super cool stuff.
Maybe our next step here is to do a few cuts.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's some of these games too that we didn't really talk about. We just kind of mentioned, oh yeah, the soundtrack's also good when we were doing visuals, so we can bring up some of those. I think just for, once again, the kind of Marvel Snap argument of like there's not a ton of songs in this game, I'm happy to drop Grounded here to simplify things. I love the music in there, but I don't think there is tons of it, and I think there's many soundtracks I would personally want to see here, and I know you haven't really engaged with much with the music, so that's a nice easy cut, I think.
Definitely was drinking most of the nights that I was playing Grounded, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs about spiders and stuff like that, so I wasn't listening to the music at all.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm trying to look at this and see if there's other like easy ones that I would. I don't know if I'm passionate about God of War, and I know we savagely cut it from visuals, so I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't think I would be fighting for that one.
Already having like PTSD from the last conversation about God of War. I do think God of War, like musically, is doing a lot of the same things that like maybe Elden Ring is doing, but Elden Ring is doing it so much better. Just this kind of like almost like old, I don't say old, but like these huge orchestral songs that are meant to be moment to moment, like make you feel something throughout, and then also just like when you're like moving through the world, give you something kind of like pretty to listen to. But Elden Ring does such a better job of establishing a mood that I don't think God of War even touches. I wouldn't say that there's been any particular song in God of War that I was like, this was the best theme of the song of the game. Whereas like Elden Ring, I bet you I can like point at a few different boss fights where I'm like, man, that theme was incredible.
Yep. Next, I want to hear from you on Norco, actually. So we kind of shoved this to the side because, for me, honestly, I just do not remember it so much. But I want to hear your case for a Norco, and if you think it's worthy of staying or if you're happy to cut it, let me know where you're at.
So Norco is another synth-influenced soundtrack where this one shifts a little bit. Instead of trying to be this like hard sci-fi synth album or soundtrack, it is there's lots of like flutes and horns and like almost like jazzy drums. I'd say the whole thing that kind of takes it away from some of the other synth soundtracks on this is that it has this kind of like Louisiana jazz influence on top of being synthy, which is really neat and like kind of unlike anything I've heard. But I'd still say like it has to beat some of these other soundtracks that are synth driven as well, because it is kind of falling into that same category, and I would easily put Tunic and Citizen Sleeper over it still.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, I feel
I'm
bad because
okay
I
with
actually
that
have a
one
list
still.
here on a notepad that's like, these are songs I want or albums I wanted to listen to this week in preparation for this. And Norco is on that list, but I didn't get to it, so I feel bad. But
Great one. It is a great one.
yeah, we'll drop that. I'll also murder a couple of mine here. I really like what Roller Drum is doing for a soundtrack. I think it maybe isn't quite, maybe it doesn't have the variety of some of the other games. It is great. It's hard for me to say anything bad about it, but I think if you are okay with that, we can get rid of that one.
Yeah.
And then I'm very happy that TMNT made it in visuals. I think that if I had to pick what's stronger, the music or the visuals, it's hard to pick, but I think I would go visuals. I think I can drop that one out of here. I don't think it needs to be risen up here, so I'll drop that one out as well. And is there any other easy cuts for me from my nominations? I'll throw this one out as well, which is Midnight Suns, where I have not listened to the whole thing yet. I really like what's there, but I think if we're talking about things that are incredibly unique, I don't know if Midnight Suns is that. It just feels like it's very effective at like not even being a copycat, because that feels like undermining it. I really like the music, but I don't think I'm there yet with it. It's almost just too fresh. So
Anthemic Marvel music, if you like Marvel, like stuff that's been in the Marvel movies or pretty old Marvel games, like you're not necessarily getting something new here, but it is still well done.
Yeah. So let's get rid of that to simplify things.
I'm okay with moving Soul Hackers out of here. Okay. It is fun, but like I also can list about 10 other Shin Megami Tensei soundtracks that are better. That is probably one of the weaker ones, despite still being sick. It's super fun. Gotcha. But yeah, I would listen to a Persona track all day before it. So
wow. This is getting tricky here when I look at this.
Yeah. I have another comfortable cut. Even though I do think that it has an incredible soundtrack. And it was up there with one of my favorites of the year. It is not going to, and it wouldn't have been in my personal top 5, and that's Stray. Once again, I'm willing to kind of let that one go a little earlier. Once again, really cool synth soundtrack, but like there's other ones here that I think do a cooler job of that. Yeah, if you like Blade Runner, it does the Blade Runner thing real good.
It's true. I feel like this list might end up being many of yours, and I think it's just a level of passion where when I'm looking at these, honestly, outside of Tunic, I don't know if I'm just like diehard needing many of these to show up. So I can help simplify this a bit more by pointing the gun at Triangle Strategy, which I think does have a great soundtrack, and I put that one on again this week because I haven't played that game since March, April, and there's a couple songs that got stuck in my head again. I really like what's there. I think if I'm being reductive and comparing it to Octopath Traveler, which is a very easy thing to do, that soundtrack is like maybe top 5 all time for me.
Wow.
And I don't think Triangle Strategy rises to that occasion. So it's really good. It's really effective at what it's doing, but I don't know. Even of the ones that I've played here, I think I'd go for it over Triangle Strategy. So I'll cut that one out, assuming you don't have any love for that one.
I didn't play nearly enough to have
orchestral, it's epic, it fits the scale of what's going on in the war. But yeah, I think it's maybe it needed a bit more variety or something to rise up to this top 5 level, but still great.
In that same kind of somewhat in that same conversation of like orchestral stuff, Stranger of Paradise, they're different renditions and reworks of old Final Fantasy songs. So like you can get these elsewhere. While there's still maybe some of those like all-time greats, you've heard them before. So I think that one's can go in place of some of the original music from this year.
This is getting tricky when I look down here. Live Alive is one as well that I had on my list to re-listen to. And so I think it might fall just for unfamiliarity. But I remember at the time of playing it, there was a few themes, in particular for certain characters or areas or time zones, I guess you'd say, time eras, that are really fantastic. Like really, really great soundtrack. It was taking those original songs and HDifying them in many ways while still keeping it, even though I didn't play the original, but going back and listening to what some of those originals sound like. So yeah, really, really great soundtrack. I really like this game. I feel like I think this is one of those recency ones where I think if I played it in November or October or something, I think I'd be like hotter on it, but it came out in July, and I feel like my opinion of it is just like kind of very slowly, but still like kind of just dwindling. Like I really liked my time with it, but not one that I think I'll revisit or that I have necessarily big fond memories of. So shout outs to Live for looking and sounding great, but I'm happy to remove that one from our nominee list here.
It's getting into a territory of like there are soundtracks on here that I would want to own physically, right? Like these would be stuff I would like buy on vinyl or buy a CD of or buy the soundtrack digitally. That I see myself going back to for years to come. And one of those that does not fall into that category is Cult of the Lamb.
Cult of the Lamb for me is like a couple great songs that like stand out in my mind, but as a fully rounded out soundtrack, I think I can agree with you there.
So I'm happy or not happy, but I'm comfortable seeing that one go.
If this was like music / sound effects, sound design, I think Cult of the Lamb would have a stronger case, but I'm with you on that one.
So we're in a position here because it's a lot of games that I've played and a lot of games that you've played, and I don't know where the 2 Point and Kirby for you, Serial Cleaners for you, and then for me it's like Citizen Sleeper and like Metal Hellsinger I think is almost going to be a lock for me.
I'll help out. And so Serial Cleaners, I love the soundtrack. There's a good amount of variety, as I mentioned, to kind of flex on what the characters' personalities are like. But I do remember making this criticism in my review that I did with Cooper, which is that there is certain songs in that game where they just have the grossest sounding snare drum that actually like ends up being kind of annoying. And it's not like an intentional. I mean, it is intentional, but it wasn't intentionally supposed to be grating. But I found it got kind of annoying. I think I probably turned the volume down for certain soundtrack things. So I think, if I'm going to undermine it for any reason, it would be that. But the songs that do stand out are great, but I will help simplify the position. And then once again, 2 Point Campus, like if we're doing best individual song, I would make a case for Let's Lance, or I can't remember the name of a couple other ones that really stand out to me. As an overall soundtrack, I don't know if I would fight for it. So I think I'm doing a lot of chopping here, and I'm okay with that because I think you are a lot more passionate about some great soundtracks here than I have this year. I feel like once I got Tunic on the list, I can like die happy. That
was a lock for me no matter what as well. So here's one that I'm struggling with a little bit, and I think I know where we will land on it. I feel like there's a lot of variety on this list, and I would almost like to get down to specific genres of music.
Okay.
And Elden Ring and Xenoblade are both large-scale orchestral soundtracks that both are gorgeous, like truly some of the best like orchestral soundtracks of the year. I think it comes down to the fact that one. You know what I mean? Like you're more familiar with one. Do you think you would put Elden Ring in your top 5 for music?
I honestly might, and it's almost because I just didn't like connect with as many soundtracks as I particularly like even compared to last year. I think there was more soundtracks to me that like I still listen to Unpacking. Sable is still fantastic, things like that. So it's tricky. And for Elden Ring, like I can remember that Limgrave theme, which is very simple and subtle, but it's very effective. I think about that menu music, but like I don't know, it's just not it's not on the tip of my tongue anymore. And it's tricky because once again, it
came out in the beginning of the year.
Came out in March. I was probably playing it until mid-April, and then I haven't touched it since, and I've never listened to the soundtrack again on its own. So it's a really hard one for me to feel passionate about, unfortunately.
I do want it to kind of be between those two, and I think something that pulls Elden Ring ahead in place of Xenoblade as well. Like I do really like the energy of Xenoblade's music and how like just kind of, like I said, optimistic that music is. It really is kind of like a joy to run around that world, even though it's like the circumstances are a little heavy, but like there's lots of like, and every once in a while there's like a somber song and there's like flutes playing, and like your main two characters are both playing flutes. So like anytime you're running around in the world and you're sending off people into off into the afterlife, you play a song for them, and like, oh, that's really cool. Elden Ring, during a lot of those like bigger, large scale moments, there's these huge choirs that get behind it as well. And like I think something that Elden Ring can do that Xenoblade doesn't is you can sing along to the Elden Ring music a little bit in a way that you can't necessarily do Xenoblade, because it is fully orchestral, at least for the most part, where Elden Ring has like some of these epic songs that Xenoblade is more about like carrying through like a tone or a feeling, where Elden Ring is just talking or trying to like just blow the doors off sometimes and really, really go for it. And I imagine if I was stuck between sitting in a crowd and listening to somebody play this music to me, Elden Ring would be like, I'd be in tears by the end. Whereas like Xenoblade, I'd be like, wow, that was nice.
Yeah.
So
before we make that cut, or like, let's say move Elden Ring up, you know, removing Kirby, since you haven't played that one, like, do you feel that those other soundtracks are stronger than Xenoblade? Like, I know we've narrowed it down to like almost that genre element of it.
Yeah.
But like, I guess what I'm asking is there a reason why you wouldn't want Elden Ring and Xenoblade? Is that because you really want to see like 2 to 3 of these other ones instead of it?
Well, I know Signalis I want on there, and I know I want Metal Hellsinger on there. I think Signalis sounds insane. Like the soundtrack of this is one of my favorites of the year. The tape delay thing is such a cool move. It does such a good effective job of reminding you of like that great Silent Hill era of music as well. Like I think Silent Hill has some of the best music in games, and it's evocative of that, while also doing its own thing. The classical music that they choose throughout are beautiful songs, absolutely beautiful songs, and they go above and beyond in adjusting how that feels, and making it feel a little uncomfortable in a really, really neat way. And then Metal Hellsinger is just like straight up an incredible like metal soundtrack. If you like metal music, it is excellent.
Should we cut Citizen Sleeper to make things easier?
I guess
there's
we would
not
have
enough room,
to,
right?
I know. Yeah, I was about to say that's where we're landing. Like Citizen Sleeper, super good synthwave soundtrack as well. Like it would have been a fight between like that and Tunic wins.
Yeah, Tunic wins.
Yeah. Citizen Sleeper has an excellent soundtrack though.
Okay.
So I have it, like I can see it right now.
Yeah. Quick reminder for the audio listeners: Tunic, Neon White, and Signalis are locked at the moment. We have 4 contenders. Of course, we're looking for half of these to move forward: Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Elden Ring, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and Metal Hellsinger. I can let Kirby drop just because of the way you are talking about all of these soundtracks. Kind of trumps for me, where I'm like truly thinking about like one song, and that song is so cool, and there's other good music in there, but it's like I once again am the champion of a single song from a soundtrack, like 2 Point Campus. So I will make that cut, leaving it down to 3 games. And so I'm gonna let you pick. I'm leaning on you here because I think I just think you're in a better spot this year for soundtracks than I am. So I trust you more than I trust myself.
I brought my A game. I'm wearing.
You brought your A game. So
black metal T-shirt and a underground hip hop artist on my hat today. I was like, we're talking music. We'll wear some music here and fight for some stuff.
So it sounds like you're cutting Xenoblade Chronicles 3, keeping Elden Ring and Metal Hellsinger.
That's it, man. Sad to see him go, but I really did kind of like. You said Tunic, and I was like, well, how about these 4?
Hey, Tunic is great. I love Neon White, and I remember, and I put, once again, I trust myself, and on my best music list, I put Elden Ring. It's just been so long since I've been there, but I trust myself. I trust the Dylan that put that on my list originally.
Past Dylan.
And everything you've said about Metal Hellsinger, like that just sounds amazing. Also, it is a rhythm game, so that helps. Signalis is actually the weird one where, like, I have played that game for a few hours, and for some reason the music has like not downloaded to my brain. So I think now that you've mentioned it, when I go back and play it the next week here, I'm gonna turn the maybe I just haven't had the volume high enough or something. I think for spooky games I tend to like, I don't want it too loud for jump scare reasons, because that when the zombies jump out of you, it's pretty, or I don't know if they're zombies, but whatever they are, when they jump out of you, that's a scary noise. So I'm trying to keep myself safe or something.
Soundtrack like into Discord for you, and you can poke around at your leisure.
I'm going to send you a couple songs too.
Do that.
Not that they need to be on the top 5, but you got to listen to this 2 Point Campus song. It is fucking groovy. So there you go. Our top 5 list: Tunic, Neon White, Signalis, Elden Ring, Metal Hellsinger. How much crossover did we have? Elden Ring and Tunic are in both. So shout outs to those two for being best visuals, best music.
I think they're going to be in Dante, more.
That does it for us today. Yeah, they're going to show up again in other categories. As I mentioned, next week on probably the 13th-ish of December, it will be the best levels. That's going to be a lot of fun because, of course, what exactly is a level in a video game? That is not always clear. What exactly makes one level, especially when we're talking about an open world game city? Is that a level? We'll find out next week. And then best characters after that, followed the week after by our top 10 games of the year, and then we'll make a collective list. It's been really hard for me to make a list this year because of how strong that, like, I'm going to say 5 to 20 ranges ranking games. Like, that is so close and strong that it's been a very hard year for me. But this was a very fun first episode kicking off Game of the Year season. Dante, thank you for joining me. And we'll be talking again in just a few days here for another few hours, I'm sure. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Let us know what your favorite visuals and favorite music of the year is, if we missed anything or if we got anything right. And we'll see you all again in just a few days. Bye-bye.